find their way inside to the rotunda and on their way to the floor of the Senate.
This is KPT. I'm Sean. Everything focused.
Here is 10 minutes past. She is a reporter for MSNBC. She was inside the Senate when this happened.
There was a lot of commotion on the House floor. People were starting to kind of get agitated. We started hearing overhead announcements. There's Christmas, Rotunda, protesters have reached the Capitol. We started to get masks out from under, gas masks out from under our seats. Some of the reporters have been getting heard about 3 gunshots.
Legislative agenda. And now, just to put some unprecedented flavors to this, former President George W. Bush, who was a Republican president, the last one before
more sampling collection points in those areas with larger populations. We're sticking to the combination of door-to-door sampling and the centralized sampling, and take different forms of sampling to reduce personnel gathering and improve the sampling efficiency. The city has reported most of the cases in her area.
Today, reporting live from Oakland.
Well, President-elect Joe Biden and President Trump had plenty to say about the storming of the Capitol building and the chaos that followed. 6 Latino joins us live with the latest on that. Sarah, Joe Biden says storming the Capitol, smashing windows, and threatening the safety of elected officials is not protest, it's insurrection.
And I taped you without your knowledge. I would be breaking about 10 laws, okay? I'd be subject to penalties, fines, and
I am genuinely shocked and sad that our nation
it's against the law. So he was actually illegally taped. Now, I understand the background of this, that Georgia Secretary of State had received 18 calls from the White House to insist that he take a phone call from the president. So the man had fobbed off talking to President Trump for a whole day, and they kept pestering him. And of course, the Secretary of State there, who's a Trump supporter, does not want to be used later in the day, doesn't want to be exploited. So what he does is he tapes them as kind of a safety measure so that he can prove what was said or not said. So he does it to protect himself, but at the same time he breaks the law. Now look, there are two parts here. I do not like the idea of taping someone without their permission. At the same time, with the president,
like technology, that's how it works. We need to protect ourselves.
Authorities have announced that communities and villages will be closed off until negative results are confirmed, except for essential workers, including medical staff, police, and social workers. Ding Xin oversees a local community in downtown Shijiazhuang. He explains the control efforts.
Workers from a community will ensure residents have enough daily supplies. We will help pick up their orders or go to purchase what they need.
Schools and kindergartens have also been closed after the city saw a surge in cases since last Saturday.
And going even further, Governor of Vermont, Phil Scott, another Republican, now calling for Trump to resign or be removed from the Oval Office. Democrat Ilhan Omar says she is already drawing up new articles of impeachment against Donald Trump. Omar also vowing, along with others, that Congress will tonight continue the process of reading out the Electoral College votes and declaring Joe Biden as the next president of the United States.
Yesterday, not today. That's all.
Second of 2 Senate runoff votes that now gives control of the U.S. Senate to the Democrats. Reporting live, I'm Mark Douglas.
Let's go to 680's Richard Southern, who's looking at the reaction from here at home. He's hearing from the mayor, the premier, and the prime minister today. He joins us live. Richard.
Yes, Sarah, they're all weighing in on this incredible situation we're all watching together out of Washington, D.C. Premier Ford probably had the most strongly worded reaction. Premier Ford in a statement to 680 News writing, quote, "The situation in Washington is absolutely disgraceful. The peaceful transfer of power is crucial to any democracy, and I'm incredibly disappointed with what we're witnessing in the United States today," end quote. Now, let's not forget, 4 years ago, Doug Ford was a supporter of Donald Trump, a vocal supporter of Donald Trump. But his statement very stern tonight indeed. Let's hear next from Prime Minister Trudeau. Here's what the PM had to say.
Hopefully, everything will return to normal shortly. But we're going to continue to do what we need to do to make sure that Canadians are well served in our relationship with the United States, regardless of how things unfold.
Meantime, I talked to Toronto Mayor John Tory, and I asked him what he thinks about the situation playing out in the U.S. Capitol right now.
I deeply regret what you've said is happening in Washington, but I guess that is for them to deal with, and it's really sad in the context of what is supposed to be the celebration of a great democracy, one of the world's great democracies, having rendered its verdict with respect to who they wish to have in a position of leadership.
And Mayor Tory tells me he's confident that any pro-Trump protests here in Toronto will be peaceful. Reporting live, Richard Southern, 680 News.
Breaking news from the U.S. Capitol.
As soon as I turned off the last video,
pro-Trump protesters earlier clashing with police breaching the Capitol building that is now believed to be secure. A curfew is underway. Various levels of law enforcement appear to be on standby, although the situation in the U.S. Capitol is very tense. The certification of the results of the election was underway. That's been recessed. Congress hopes to reconvene later tonight. One woman shot and killed inside the U.S. Capitol building. President-elect Joe Biden says democracy is under unprecedented assault. President Trump again repeating the lie the election was stolen, but he's telling protesters to go home in peace. Let's reconvene our coverage live on CNN.
Conspiracy theory taking over a not insignificant part of the American population. And we're being moved here a little bit again. Wolf, I think we should just move down the street here. You can see some of these foot shields have been brought in here. And there's a sense, I think, in the next few moments that the police will try to push these Trump supporters further away from the Capitol. And of course, they've been here all day. They've been here from a few minutes after Trump finished speaking, that speech, which was, again, full of lies and conspiracy theories. And when those supporters reached the Capitol and breached through those barriers. So this is finally clearing the mob out after many hours. Wolf.
Are these people that you're speaking to over there? You've done excellent reporting over these past many months on some of these fringe conspiracy groups, QAnon among others, in various parts of the country. Are you seeing those kinds of people where you are
how's he gonna know that's what the internet?
You know, Wolf, what we've learned from traveling the country over the past few
months, he doesn't know how to answer the question the way you asked it,
is that so many people who support this president buy into these conspiracy theories. And although right now I can't see anybody with a sort of QAnon sticker or flag, what I have found, and it's unfortunate that, you know, as you begin talking with many of these folks, that is, they begin echoing these lines from QAnon, these conspiracy theories that get bopped around in the right-wing media circles online, on Trump media networks.
High number of hospitalizations with more than 1,400 accused of a criminal offense, including those that arise from a high-conflict divorce. You need a highly experienced criminal defense lawyer. I'm Joseph Newberger, a certified
misinformation and mistruths that many of these
divergents. Là, on a à peu près 40 000 personnes de vaccinées au Québec, mais il semblerait qu'on
try and move this line further away from the Capitol. And as you can see, these Trump supporters taking baby steps. They're going nowhere in a hurry, even though we're now well beyond the 6 p.m. curfew, and we're moving down a little bit from the line.
I just want you to be very, very careful over there, Donnie, because this looks like potentially it could get even more ugly and dangerous in the coming minutes as we see the police beginning to move in. Are the police telling these rioters over there, do they have a bullhorn? Are they saying you must be off the streets? There is a curfew in effect. You will be arrested if you refuse to obey the law. Supposedly, these are individuals who claim they support law and order. Are they hearing these instructions from the police?
So the police, not at least from our position here, we haven't heard those sort of announcements come out from police, but there has been a lot more movement in the build-up and after that 6 p.m. curfew hour. I spoke to some folks here asking them, did they care that they were breaking this curfew? And some folks asked me sort of sarcastically, oh, what time is it? Oh, should I get out of here? People didn't seem too bothered by this. These, of course, the folks, many of these folks, some of them are actually holding pro-police flags and things like that while they create disruption here in the Capitol for the police. So there is no end to the irony, which is very often the case when talking to a lot of these folks. I mean, the people here today, some of these folks who caused the destruction, who drove through these barricades, they told me earlier they view themselves as patriots. They view any person who who lives in the real world and sees that Joe Biden as president-elect of the United States, they view them as the traitors. So folks are so far down these rabbit holes of misinformation as we see the police line now moving forward here just a bit again, Wolf. And folks, as we've seen all along here, we haven't seen so much the Trump supporters pushing back on the police line, but just taking those baby steps. And of course, past curfew here, Wolf.
Yeah, the president just moments ago in that tweet called them great patriots. Really a sick situation unfolding. Alex Marquardt, where are you?
We're a little bit not too far away from TONNEAU Sullivan and what he is seeing as well. And what you're really getting a sense of right now, Wolf, so we're 23 minutes after the curfew, is a sense of significantly dwindled enthusiasm. These are not the fired up Trump supporters, not the fired up rioters who we saw protesting for much of the afternoon. This is much more muted. They are now being pushed westwards away from the Capitol towards the Washington Monument. The police line is encircling that group of protesters in their reflective vests with their helmets on, batons at the ready, pushing what has been an aggressive crowd, but not a violent crowd, at least for the past hour or so. We're not necessarily seeing violent altercations taking place as the police push them back. In the time that we've been back over here on this side of the Capitol, and certainly since the curfew has gone into place, we have not seen the police having to use things like pepper spray, tear gas, some of those pepper balls that we have seen in previous protests here.
From Washington, you've been listening to live continuing coverage on CNN. Night has fallen in the American Capitol. A curfew now in effect until 6 a.m. And 6 80's Madison Fitzpatrick joins us now live with a rundown of today's historic events. Madison.
Yeah, James, well, things all started today when thousands of people stormed Capitol Hill and eventually and incredibly made their way inside. Now, we saw little police presence at first as we watched protesters light smoke bombs in the stairwells, bombard doors, smash windows, entering officials' personal offices, and even entering the chamber floor itself. But right now, as curfew has started, the National Guard and riot police remain on the ground of the U.S. Capitol. Right now, I am seeing many protesters still there. The riot police are just lined up. Nothing seems to be happening right now, just a bunch of standing around, speaking their mind, a bunch of people waving flags, things like that. Obviously, the sun has gone down. It'll be interesting to see how things unfold later this evening. But yeah, riot crew and the National Guard are still out there just outside of the Capitol. Now, the curfew enacted by the mayor of Washington will last until 6 a.m. tomorrow. Capitol Police now say that the Capitol is secure. It's unknown if any sessions will resume inside the chambers tonight. However, in a speech this afternoon, President-elect Joe Biden pleaded to Americans for peace and calm.
In this god-awful display today, it's bringing home to every Republican and Democrat and Independent in the nation that we must step up. This is the United States of America.
And after continuous calls by Democrats and Republicans for President Trump to tell his supporters to stand down, Trump finally released a video asking protesters to go home, but still insisting the election was stolen from him.
This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you. You're very special. I know how you feel. But go home and go home in peace.
Now, after everything we have been seeing this afternoon, we are hearing that this historic day has not remained peaceful, as reports of multiple officers injured in the clashes with the protesters, and a woman that was shot in the chest on Capitol grounds has died in hospital. Stay with 680 News as we continue to cover the latest developments out of Washington. I'm Madison Fitzpatrick.
Breaking news, you've been listening to continuing coverage on chaos in the American Capitol. A curfew underway in Washington, D.C. Pro-Trump protesters breaching the Capitol building. That building now believed to be secure, but various levels of law enforcement appear to be on standby. The certification of the results of the election were underway. They were recessed. Congress hopes to reconvene later tonight. Time now for 680 Business for Richard Southern.
Well, lo and behold, the Dow actually closed at a record high despite the unprecedented situation playing out in Washington, D.C. Investors really more attuned and more tuned into the Georgia runoff elections. The Democrats have now gained control of the U.S. Senate. Investors applauding that because it provides political clarity. It also paves the way for more fiscal stimulus to get passed in the United States. So that's really what drove the markets today. The Dow closing up 437 points to 30,829. The S&P up 21 points. The NASDAQ was lower, though, down 78. On the Toronto stock market, the TSX higher. It gained 145 points to 17,828. We did get a look at Toronto housing numbers for December. Wow, the December housing market very strong with the average price in December. Average selling price is $932,000. That also puts a bow on the year that was in Toronto housing. And, well, lo and behold, Toronto home prices reached a record in 2020, even with the COVID-19 pandemic. What it did, the pandemic was spur on people looking for a bigger homes. And the low interest rates also attracted new buyers. The average selling price for a Toronto home in 2020 was $930,000. That was up 13.5%. From 2019. Got the price for gold right now lower, down 34 bucks to $1,920 the ounce. Canadian dollar higher, it's up to 78.93 cents US. This is 680 News.
Right now in downtown Toronto, it is overcast, 1 degree, feels like -3. 680 News time at the Double Tones will be 6:30.
Number 1 for news in Toronto. This is 680 News.
Here are Sledgena Dominzik and James Monroe. Good evening. It's Wednesday, January 6th. And for Sledgena Dominzik, I'm Sarah Parrott.
Here's what you need to know right now.
Unbelievable and historic scenes inside the U.S. Capitol building as Trump supporters force their way in and onto the Senate floor, grinding proceedings to a halt. At least one person has been shot.
Joe Biden says democracy is under unprecedented assault after protesters stormed Capitol Hill.
The scenes of chaos at the Capitol do not reflect a true America.
Amid the chaos and violence in the Capitol building, the process to declare Joe Biden as the next president will reportedly continue while the Democrats in the Georgia Senate races win.
Investors look largely past the situation in Washington, D.C. The Dow closes at a record high of more than 400 points. Business at 56.
680 News time, 6:31.
Time for traffic and weather together on One. Here's Carlin Donahue. This report is brought to you by Diamond and Diamond Lawyers. Right now on the eastbound 401, east of Ward and in the Express, we have a stalled vehicle on the right shoulder. It's causing a minor delay just approaching that stretch. Tow truck on scene, so watch out for flashing lights. Could be a visual distraction. But that's it. That's all we have on our major routes at this time. So You're pretty much in for a great drive. On city streets, North and South Teston at Bathurst has reopened. And on Woodbine, north of Kingston Road, we have a vehicle fire blocking certain lanes. Unfortunately, no cameras in that stretch. So if you're driving through there, give us a call, star 680, let me know which lanes are blocked. If you've been injured, Diamond and Diamond is in your corner. See why so many clients have referred their friends and family back to Diamond and Diamond. Call 1-800-567-HURT for your free consultation. Your next report's at 6:41 with forecast. Here's Natasha Ramsey.
Definitely quiet in the forecast arena here. We're going to be mainly cloudy tonight, down to -4. Morning wind chills -9, and it's slightly cooler tomorrow than today. We got up to 2 degrees today. It's going to be -1 tomorrow. Wind chill -6 with more sun as the day goes on. Overnight tonight, down to a low of -4. It is currently 1 degree at Pearson.
4%.
Breaking news from Washington, where a curfew is now underway after an angry wave of Donald Trump supporters upset about the election results overwhelmed police barricades to storm the Capitol building earlier today. That building is now secure. The National Guard, along with riot police, are trying to calm the situation. But despite all that, the crowd is not going away.
So we've heard from President Trump and President-elect Biden both taking different stances. One social media giant taking Trump's statement down. More on that in a moment. First 6 Cities, Mama Crunch, joins us live with a breakdown of
where's all the rioting, protesting, Trump supporters,
including a deadly shooting moment.
Half an hour into the curfew, James, there's still lots of Trump supporters outside of the Capitol building on the streets of Washington, D.C. There's lots of law enforcement that was moving people back slowly over the last hour or so, but clearly nobody is at least being told to go home or go away as of yet, or even if they are, they're not leaving. So that's where we stand at the exact moment that we are now a couple of hours, several hours now removed from when Trump supporters were able to breach through the walls of the Capitol building. Let's remember, this is one of the most secure buildings in the United States of America. The White House, the Capitol building, the Pentagon, those are the sort of big three buildings that we know that are supposed to be secure, but somehow these Trump supporters were able to smash through windows, get into the rotunda of the Capitol building, and make their way to the floor of the Senate. Now, that caused proceedings to grind to a halt. What was happening inside the Senate was they were trying to ratify the presidential election from November 3rd, certifying that Joe Biden is the president-elect and leading him to his final step of being inaugurated on January 20th. That was put on hold. They're going to try to get that back underway this evening and wrap it all up to get that process done, even though there are some Republican senators who are expected to object to it and who did object to it earlier. Now, it took several hours for the Capitol building to be cleared out. Mary Alice Parks with ABC, she's their political correspondent, is wondering why it took so long.
I grew up miles from 2 military bases where I have seen fighter jets scrambled in minutes. I have seen military in D.C., where Rick and I live. I've seen military march down streets fast when they have to. And we just
all these foreign invaders
visibly on TV today, and that was surprising. It was surprising to feel like it took so long.
Now, we do know that one woman who did make her way inside the Capitol building was shot. She has since died. A couple of law enforcement agencies confirming it to several news outlets in the States that woman has since passed away. Reporting live, I'm Owen Qureshi.
This is 680 News. Separate statements from the president and president-elect today. And the one released by Donald Trump has been taken down from at least one popular social media site. 680's Phil Martino joins us live with reaction from the two men. Phil.
Sarah, after the protesters stormed Capitol Hill, Joe Biden said our democracy is under unprecedented assault.
The scenes of chaos at the Capitol do not reflect a true America, do not represent who we are.
Biden urged U.S. President Donald Trump to go on national TV and demand an end to the siege. Instead, Trump addressed his supporters in a minute-long video on Twitter.
I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election, and everyone knows it, especially the other side. But you have to go home now. We have to have peace.
Trump's tweet has been flagged. The message reads, "This claim of election fraud is disputed, and this tweet cannot be replied to, retweeted, or liked due to a risk of violence." Facebook's VP of Integrity has removed the Trump video from Facebook. He's saying we removed it because on balance, we believe it contributes to rather than diminishes the risk of ongoing violence. Phil Martino, 680 News.
You're listening to continuing coverage of the chaos in Washington as American politicians on both sides of the aisle react to the unrest. The official results of the Georgia runoff elections are in. 680's Mark Douglas is following that. Joins us live with the latest from the Republicans and the Democrats. Mark. Okay, we'll check back with Mark in a second. Let's go to Richard Southern, who's looking at reaction here at home. He's hearing from the mayor, the premier, and the prime minister.
I think the most strongly worded statement came from Ontario Premier Doug Ford, who writes, quote, "The situation in Washington is absolutely disgraceful. The peaceful transfer of power is crucial to any democracy, and I'm incredibly disappointed with what we're witnessing in the United States today." Again, that Premier Ford. We also heard from the Prime Minister, Mr. Trudeau.
Hopefully, everything will return to normal shortly, but we're going to continue to do what we need to do to make sure that Canadians are well served in our relationship with the United States, regardless of how things unfold.
Meantime, I talked to Toronto Mayor John Tory, and I asked him what he thinks about the situation playing out in the U.S. Capitol right now.
It's really sad in the context of what is supposed to be the celebration of a great democracy, one of the world's great democracies, having rendered its verdict with respect to who they wish to have in a position of leadership.
Gauging political reaction here at home. Richard Southern, 680 News.
Well, let's head back to 680's Mark Douglas, who joins us live with the latest from Republicans and Democrats. Mark.
And Sarah, this process that was interrupted by violent Donald Trump supporters today is being condemned, or rather the interruption itself is being condemned from all sides of the political spectrum in Washington. Now, this process today in Congress, really just a rubber stamp process to declare the Electoral College votes from the November election, and then have Vice President Mike Pence declare Joe Biden as the next president. And again, that reaction coming into having this whole process torn apart today has been rather intense. Here's Republican Representative from Illinois, Adam Kinzinger.
Attempt to occupy the Capitol, to basically not just destroy the buildings, to intimidate members of Congress. Any other country this was happening, it would be called a coup.
The Republican governor of Vermont already calling for Trump to either resign or to be removed from office. Democratic Congresswoman Ilhan Omar also saying that she's already drawing up new articles of impeachment against Donald Trump. And even outside the political realm, the National Association of Manufacturers called Vice President Pence to remove Donald Trump from office. Meanwhile, down in Georgia, much better situation for the Democrats down there. In the Senate races, John Ossoff has been declared the second of two Democrats to win their runoff elections for the Senate, so the Democrats get control of the U.S. Senate once Joe Biden takes office. Reporting live, I'm Mark Douglas.
Meanwhile, Canadians in Washington are being urged to follow the advice of local authorities after the actions earlier today. Canada's ambassador to the U.S. took to Twitter to say they are monitoring developments very closely, calling for calm. All staff at the Canadian Embassy, which is not far from Capitol Hill, are safe and accounted for.
And happening now, let's go live to CNN for continued coverage of the riots in Washington.
Bowser of Washington, D.C. The curfew was imposed, it started at 6 o'clock at 6:40, and you still see lots of people in violation of the curfew. Let's go out to Brian Todd, who is among them reporting. Journalists are exempted from this, but it really is, Brian, pretty remarkable. I don't see a lot of action against people violating the curfew.
No. What's up, guys? That's right, Jake. We're going to walk you down toward this crowd a little bit, Eddie. Let's go down the hill a little bit. Okay. Some of these people are trying to harass us a little bit as we go down toward the crowd. These are people who were pushed way back in the perimeter from the Capitol toward the reflecting pool by some of the riot police. And you're right, a lot of these people probably are at risk of possibly being arrested at this point. And what you have over here to the left is a long line.
Sounds like you're in a hairy situation there, so we're gonna let you escape. People who believe in the first. People who believe in the First Amendment only for their point of view is always an interesting situation. One of Monteraju is also reporting from the Capitol for us.
It would have been
Manu.
first, but nobody realized how important that
Senator Chuck
situation
Schumer, the
was.
Democratic leader, soon to be Senate Majority Leader, walking into a meeting with senators and other key staff, and we asked him what is next here in the electoral vote certification. He said 8 o'clock, meaning 8 o'clock Eastern is when they expect the Senate to reconvene to begin to continue with the process of this Capitol to continue with the electoral vote certification process. So Schumer said 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern. So he walked into his meeting, didn't answer any other questions. We'll see if we get any more clarity coming out, especially if some of the objectors on the Republican side still plan to drag out the proceedings. We know there's a lot of pressure for them to drop those efforts. Uncertain if that's going to be the case. But at the moment, House and Senate leaders plan to move ahead. Nancy Pelosi sent a letter to all House members saying they plan to move forward tonight. More details are about to come out on that as well. So expect this to reconvene tonight. It could be a long night. Maybe it'll be a short night and a show of unity. But nevertheless, at least by 8 o'clock, Jay, we should expect these proceedings to continue.
All right, Monteraju. And we should know President Trump has not had one word of criticism, not one word, for any of the activities by these Trump supporting domestic terrorists who stormed the Capitol today. Not even for the individual who left the pipe bomb outside the Republican National Committee headquarters. Caitlin Collins covers the Trump White House for us. And Caitlin, what is going on inside that building? I know there is a lot of ride or die folks there, but even they must be shocked and dispirited at what they're seeing.
I think they are, and I think the president is feeling very isolated right now because he has been hearing all day from staffers who said he needed to put out a more forceful statement. Of course, the president then put out that video and then later tweeted defending what we saw happen on Capitol Hill today. His national security advisor, Robert O'Brien, who is incredibly closely aligned with the president and typically is a pretty fierce defender of his, is tweeting that he is in agreement with the vice president and the actions he took today, saying it took courage to do that, of course, as the president has been criticizing him and complaining about him all afternoon and focusing more on what Pence did than what's been happening with his supporters on Capitol Hill. And right now, the president is still in the West Wing. We were told, and Jake, I'm learning that the president does not want his Republican allies to drop their efforts to challenge Biden's win, to object to his win, what we're expecting to play out for several hours on the Senate floor today before, of course, the pro-Trump mob breached the building. And the president does not want them to stop. And there's been some discussion, our colleagues reported, among Republican senators about abandoning those efforts. But I am told the president wants them to keep fighting. He wants them to keep going and does not want them to drop those efforts, even though, despite what the president did earlier today, holding that rally, of course, resulted in what we saw this afternoon on Capitol Hill.
All right, Caitlin Collins, thanks so much. And again, President Trump has spent so much of his presidency accusing his critics of what he is, of what he has done. And I would just like to remind our viewers that President Trump now for years has referred to journalists as the enemy of the American people. Ask yourself who's the enemy of the American people right now. It pretty clearly seems to be President Trump who is encouraging a mob, an insurrection to storm the Capitol, threatening Democrats and Republicans alike. Somebody left a pipe bomb outside the Republican National Committee headquarters today. President Trump has not had one discouraging word to say about any of this. And in many ways, we should not be surprised. This is somebody who has supporters, these are saying, real pipe bombs to Democrats and media organizations. This is somebody who both sides in terms of the white supremacist march in Charlottesville. Jim Costa also covers the Trump administration, the Trump White House for us. And Jim, I think there are a lot of calls right now from Republicans, including former Republican Congresswoman, for the cabinet to meet and invoke the 25th Amendment.
Yeah, that's right, Jake. And I think that talk is only going to continue. The head of the National Association of Manufacturers has also put out a statement suggesting that Vice President Mike Pence somehow put together an effort to remove the president from office using the 25th Amendment. I will tell you, Jake, I talked to a source, a GOP source close to the president, who speaks with him regularly, and I take no pleasure in reporting this, but this source tells me that he believes the president is out of his mind. The quote used by this source he is out of his mind. And the source said the president is so traumatized by his loss in the election. It is all he can talk about. It is all he can think about. It is all consuming for him. And that, in this source's opinion, he is out of his mind. Now, I talked to a separate source close to the White House, an advisor to the president. When I asked this advisor about the prospect of invoking the 25th Amendment and forcing the president from power, with his cabinet coming together and saying he's no longer fit to be president of the United States, this advisor said because the president has installed so many lackeys on that cabinet, of course, the president always has loyalists on his cabinet, but there are lackeys on this cabinet, including acting secretaries who've been installed recently, that it's just unlikely. The probability of that happening is just not going to happen. And in the words of this advisor, I just don't think the cabinet is going to invoke the 25th Amendment. But it is interesting, Jake, and according to this advisor, aides and allies of the president have been having these kinds of conversations.
Did you just say the president has AIDS? I don't appreciate you saying my goddamn president have AIDS when you don't even have AIDS.
We're talking about the president of the United States. You don't take pleasure in that as a reporter, using that kind of language, but when a source close to the president,
so I think they're replaying the World Today from yesterday.
I think much more cooperative that is working with Republicans, or others.
We continue to follow the breaking news from Washington, and we're going to continue to cover the events taking place
at 46 minutes past the hour now. You're listening to the Beijing Hour, and coming up in sports, Man City is back in the English League.
6 80's Madison Fitzpatrick is joining us live now. Rundown of today's events, Madison. Yeah, Sarah, well, things all really started today when reports of thousands of people just marching on the grounds of Capitol Hill, eventually storming inside. We saw a little
I'm just trying to cook my onion soup with pasta.
Actually go into the chambers, onto the floor itself. They were taking selfies, posting these photos on Facebook. Right now, as curfew has started, people are still actually on the ground, so obviously not abiding by the curfew. The National Guard and riot police are remaining on the ground. Right now, I'm seeing a lot of protesters still just out on the ground. The riot police standing there in lines, kind of pushing them back slowly. Obviously, no commotion happening right now. A lot of protesters waving flags, usual things that were happening today. Now, the curfew enacted by the mayor of Washington will last until 6 a.m. tomorrow. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi saying the electoral count will resume tonight at 8 p.m. Obviously, not letting the events of today stop them from resuming and doing what needs to be done in the House. Now, in a speech this afternoon, President-elect Joe Biden pleaded to Americans for calm and for President Trump to step up.
I call on President Trump to go on national television now to fulfill his oath and defend the Constitution and demand an end to this siege.
And almost answering President-elect Joe Biden's call, President Trump actually telling his supporters to stand down, and he released a video asking protesters to go home, yet he still insisted the election was stolen from him.
We had an election come across to crazy people as though you're being forced to say that. They're making them say that thing.
Of these people.
We ain't going nowhere.
Now, this historic day was not remained peaceful, as reports of multiple officers injured in clashes earlier with protesters, and a woman that was shot in the chest on Capitol grounds has died in hospital. Stay with 680 News as we continue to cover the latest developments out of Washington. I'm Madison Fitzpatrick.
Who the fuck had a gun with bullets in it?
And happening now, let's go back to CNN for continued coverage of the unrest in Washington. Being used by a country like Turkey, warning its citizens of the dangers of walking around the United States Capitol.
All right, Clarissa Ward in London, thank you so much. That is so discouraging to hear, but it is not unexpected. We've been talking about this now for weeks. How can the United States, and look, the United States does not always live up to the standards that we hold for ourselves or that we impose upon the world. But how can the United States issue a statement about an election in Belarus or an election in Venezuela when the United States is experiencing this right now because of President Trump and his enablers?
Yeah, I mean, look, the United States is not, as you said, always, right about everything, or always, doing the right thing in accordance with our values. That's clearly not the case. But in this particular case, when it comes to the fundamentals of democracy, from beginning to end, this has been an embarrassing chapter in American history. From the point at which President Trump, even before the votes were counted, was calling for the count to stop because he didn't want, additional votes to be counted that might come in for Joe Biden, to the point where he continued to talk about fraudulent votes that he just claimed were fraudulent because they weren't for him. These are all things that in another country would be signs of a democracy that was not strong, that was failing, that was backsliding. And here we are now with our Capitol building having been vandalized by violent mobs. That's something we have not seen. We have not seen that in this country in a very, very long time. We have never seen American citizens charging our Capitol and barging in and putting lawmakers in a lockdown. And I think the significance of that is obviously going to be historic, but it's going to have lasting impacts on the United States and our ability as a nation to export democracy around the world, which is a key pillar of our foreign policy.
A horrible day for America, a horrible day because the President of the United States is not able to acknowledge reality, and because he has inspired his followers to commit many acts of domestic terrorism. Wolf?
All right, Jake, we're almost an hour into this curfew in the nation's capital in D.C.
Is this the craziest thing Trump has
folks
done
out
so
there
far?
ignoring the law,
We all knew he
ignoring
was
this
crazy.
curfew. Phil
Anybody expect this? Right before the end, he's going to try to stage a
Phil, I take it the leadership, the House and the Senate, they're going to convene once again to try to deal with the certification of what the Electoral College has already decided, that Joe Biden will be the next president of the United States.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Wolf. In the Senate, making very clear 8 p.m. is the start time. Speaker Nancy Pelosi putting out a letter to all members of the U.S. House, making clear she's spoken to the Pentagon, to the Justice Department, and to Vice President Pence's team, and they are going to restart. And the plan, according to multiple people involved, is to finish. There will not be any stopping. The question is, how long will it actually go? And Ron and Dan have been reporting a lot of this as well. What I've been hearing from Republicans is there has been some pressure and effort to try and get those Republicans who plan to object to stop, to not do it anymore, to take what they've seen over the course of the last 6, 7, 8 hours and just accept the reality of what's happening, reverse course, and just confirm and certify that Joe Biden is the next president of the United States. We've not heard yet from the Senate objectors. A group of them, I'm told, have been meeting behind closed doors. What they're going to decide, still an open question. As you noted, Wolf, got about an hour left, but we are seeing some movement. Kathy McMorris Rogers, a Washington Republican who told her hometown paper just yesterday that she planned to object to several states, has now changed her mind. And she changed her mind based on, at least according to her statement that was posted on Facebook, what she saw today. She will now vote to confirm that Joe Biden is to certify Joe Biden's electoral count. And she also called on Donald Trump to condemn what has occurred over the last several days. And I think this is the thing we've been trying to figure out. Wolf, you and I spoke about it earlier. What kind of effect will this have? What kind of tangible effect will this have on the proceedings that we know are going to restart tonight? Every lawmaker we've spoken to said, absolutely, we are getting back to it as soon as we can. We now know the time of that. We now know both chambers are going to do it. The big question right now is, are those Republicans who are going to object, and we knew for a fact they were going to object to at least 3 states, do they still plan on doing that? Or are they going to try and make this quick? And I can tell you right now, from talking to Republicans, while they aren't necessarily Republicans who are on the side of the objectors, they are pushing the objectors. See whatever deal can be made to try and end this as quickly as possible. As one Republican aide told me, this is for the good of the country at this point. What we've all seen is horrifying. Wolf?
And because everybody knows what the end result was going to be, whether it was a 1-hour discussion or a 12-hour discussion, they didn't have the votes to block what the Electoral College has already certified. They were going to lose. So why bother, especially at a dangerous moment like this? That's the argument. I assume that a lot of the Republicans who originally wanted to object will now come around and say, let's get it over.
That's exactly right. And look, I think if there was any level of understanding to what was going to happen today in terms of the objections, it was that you have 12 to 15 hours, you get your forum, you get your 5 minutes to make your case, you get your publicity, you get to represent what you said your constituents wanted you to represent, and we're going to take a while, it's going to be a long night, and we're going to need a lot of coffee, but we'd eventually get through it, and then the reality will remain the same. Now, after what everybody has seen, the lawmakers that had to go to undisclosed locations, lawmakers who were on the floor as Capitol Police were pulling guns to try and keep people who were banging on those doors.
And you've been listening to live coverage of the unrest in Washington. This historic situation began during this afternoon's Electoral College certification process, where thousands of pro-Trump protesters marched to the Capitol building and breached it. And those supporters pushing through gates to enter the building earlier today. The building has since been cleared, with protesters now just surrounding the area, not fazed by the National Guard being deployed along with SWAT, FBI, riot police. A curfew is in effect. It went into effect in Washington at 6 p.m. tonight. It's going to last until 6 a.m. tomorrow. And there's so much reaction to this unrest, including by prominent Republicans. Republican Senator Mitt Romney is blaming President Donald Trump for inciting a violent insurrection at the Capitol, and former Republican President George W. Bush also reacting today, calling the scene sickening and heartbreaking. Stay with 680 News for the very latest on the situation unfolding in Washington.
That's why I get up and turn off the fucking thing in the middle of the night when it's playing weird music. Wow,
and time now for the 680 Business Report with Richard Southern.
Good evening. Just an unprecedented scene obviously playing out in the U.S. Capitol, and one would think with this as the backdrop, investors would be selling stocks. No. The Dow today closed at an all-time high. The Dow Jones Industrial Average settling up 437 points at a record 30,829. S&P 500 up 0.5%. Investors were more interested in another story coming out of the United States, that being the Georgia runoff elections. The Democrats, it seems now, will gain control of the Senate, meaning they'll have all executive branches in the United States. Investors like that because it presents a lot of political clarity. It's certainly possible that more fiscal stimulus gets passed into law. Markets very much liking that. So that's kind of why we had the Dow closing at a record high, even as Washington, D.C. was under siege. The Dow, though, settling about 200 points off its best level of the day, but again, up 437. The NASDAQ was lower, down 78. Closer to home, the TSX higher. It was up 145 points to 17,828. The price of gold at 1,922 U.S. dollars the ounce. Had some interesting news today out of the aviation business. WestJet says it's set to, in just a few weeks' time, bring its 737 MAX planes back into Canadian skies. Now, these planes from Boeing, of course, have been grounded for almost 2 years in Canada after 2 deadly overseas crashes, but they're allowed to fly again in the States. Transport Canada hasn't allowed them to fly here yet, but it looks like certification is close at hand. And WestJet says as soon as the feds give the okay, they're going to start flying these planes 3 times a week between Toronto and Calgary. Canadian dollar tonight is higher at 78.93 cents U.S. This is 680.
And right now in downtown Toronto, a partly cloudy sky, it's 2 degrees. The News Watch never stops. 680 News is CFTR AM Toronto. It's 7 o'clock.
For breaking news, traffic, and weather, this is 680 News, Toronto.
Here are James Monroe and Slajana Dominzik.
Good evening. It's Wednesday, January 6th.
Good evening. In for Slajana Dominzik, I'm Sarah Harris. Here's what's making news this hour.
One person has died after being shot during the unbelievable and historic events taking place in and outside the U.S. Capitol.
Curfew now underway. The mood is tense on the grounds of the Capitol building. A full report in seconds.
Amid the chaos and violence in the Capitol building, the process to declare Joe Biden as the next president
what a day
will reportedly continue, while the Democrats in the Georgia Senate races win.
Investors brush aside the situation of the U.S. Capitol. The Dow closes at a record high. The TSX picks up more than 100 points. Business at 26.
680 News Time, 7:01.
Traffic and weather together on one's calling TONNEAU.
This report is brought to you by TSC. It's a really good drive out on the major routes, not really too much to worry about, but we do have on the westbound 401 approaching Kiel in the Express, a stalled vehicle on the left lane. It's not causing any kind of delay, so you're good to go. Just beware of the flashing lights of the tow trucks. If you're on the northbound DVP, north of Don Mills, we have a stalled vehicle on the right shoulder. Once again, no delay there. And eastbound 401 just moving a little bit slow through Warden in the collectors. Help keep your air cleaner and healthier with the Ionic Pro Platinum Air Purifier, available at TSC. Get it tomorrow and save big. Shop TSC.ca, today's shopping choice. Your next report's at 7-Eleven with the forecast. Here's Natasha Ramsahar.
Mainly cloudy overnight tonight, down to a low of -4. We'll wake up to that wind chill around -9. Pretty calm weather, though. After a bit of cloud in the morning, we're going to be mainly sunny through the afternoon. A high of -1 will feel closer to -6 with the wind. Overnight tonight, down to a low of -4 degrees.
Right now in downtown Toronto, 2 degrees and partly cloudy. 6:80 news time, 7:02.
Quick breaking news, a tragic day for American democracy. A historic and scary scene continues to unfold on the grounds of the U.S. Capitol building. Pro-Trump protesters refusing to leave the area. One woman shot and killed. Law enforcement appears to be on standby.
The certification of the results of the election was recessed, but may reconvene as early as 8 o'clock tonight. We've heard from both President-elect Biden and President Trump. More on that in a moment. But first, we begin our coverage with 680's Madison Fitzpatrick, who just joins us live now with the latest on this situation. Madison.
Yeah, Sarah, well, you could call what's being seen in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill right now unbelievable. If it wasn't actually happening, a historic day that will be remembered for years to come as pro-Trump supporters gathered in the American Capitol and early this afternoon managed to breach the Capitol building, arguably one of the most secure buildings in America. Many people on social media are actually wondering how they even got in. Thousands of people had marched onto Capitol Hill, stormed the building. We saw people taking selfies inside, throwing smoke bombs, getting into altercations with police, smashing glass and marching through the rotunda.
Where the fuck do you buy a smoke bomb? You're going to say United States of America, and I think you're right, which is where smoke bombs are us retailers.
Of the U.S. presidential election. It seems that Nancy Pelosi says that the electoral vote will be reconvening rather at 8 p.m. One woman appearing to be a Trump supporter was shot earlier this evening, and unfortunately we have learned that she has since died. Now,
we have learned that unfortunately she has died.
Washington,
that is a split incident.
But still many Trump supporters remain on the streets. The National Guard also deployed there. They're on scene with riot police as well. They're making lines, making walls, and just being there in case anything else happens this evening. But stay with 680 News as we continue to cover all of the events that are happening this evening. I'm Madison Fitzpatrick.
So you're listening to continuing coverage of the chaos in Washington on 680 News, also simulcast tonight on 570 News in Kitchener, News 95.7 in Halifax, and City News 101. President-elect Joe Biden has spoken, says today does not reflect a true America, adding democracy is under unprecedented assault. 680's Phil Martino joins us live with a message as well from outgoing President Trump. Phil.
James, the chaos at the Capitol today does not reflect a true America, according to Joe Biden.
Well, all of you have been watching what I've been watching. At this hour, our democracy is under unprecedented assault.
He added, at their best, the words of a president can inspire. At their worst, they can incite. He urged U.S. President Donald Trump to go on national TV and demand an end to this siege. But Trump took another route. He posted a 1-minute video on Twitter telling his supporters he knows they're hurt because they had an election stolen from them. But you have to go home. We have to have peace and order.
We don't want anybody hurt. It's a very tough period of time. There's never been a time like this where such a thing happened, where they could take it away from all of us, from me, from you, from our country.
Trump's tweet was initially flagged by Twitter, but with the message, this claim of election fraud is disputed and this tweet cannot be replied to, retweeted, or liked due to a risk of violence. But it has since been removed.
Facebook's VP of Integrity has also removed the Trump video from Facebook, saying this is an emergency situation and we're taking appropriate emergency measures, including removing President Trump's video. We removed it because on balance, we believe it contributes to rather than diminishes the risk of ongoing violence. Phil Martino, 680 News.
Well, there is plenty of U.S. political reaction from all sides, with most condemning today's shocking storming of the Capitol building. 680's Mark Douglas has the latest on that angle.
This is Banana Republic crap that we're watching happen. The violence in the Capitol building interrupted the process whereby Congress simply goes through the Electoral College votes and Vice President Mike Pence declares Joe Biden as the next president of the United States. Politicians vow that this process will continue tonight, while they also condemn this violence. Republican Congressman from Illinois, Adam Kinzinger, says in any other country, this violence would be called a coup.
People that are storming the Capitol have been radicalized to believe that this is a holy mission, similar to 1776, and nothing could be further from the truth.
Democratic Congresswoman Ilhan Omar says she is already drawing up new articles of impeachment against Donald Trump. The Republican governor of Vermont also calling for Trump to resign or be removed. Meanwhile, in Georgia, the second of two runoff votes goes to Democrat John Ossoff, and that means the Democrats will control the U.S. Senate. I'm Mark Douglas.
So here at home, we're hearing from all levels of government, the prime minister, premier, the mayor, they're all weighing in. Here's 680's Richard Southern.
Well, Prime Minister Trudeau releasing a statement reading, quote, Canadians are deeply disturbed and saddened by the attack on democracy in the United States, our closest ally and neighbor. Violence will never succeed in overruling the will of the people. We also heard from Ontario Premier Doug Ford, who came out with some very strong words. Ford writing, quote, the situation in Washington is absolutely disgraceful. The peaceful transfer of power is crucial to any democracy. I also broke news of the violence to John Tory, Toronto's mayor, and here's what he had to say about the situation.
It's really sad in the context of what is supposed to be the celebration of a great democracy, one of the world's great democracies, having rendered its verdict with respect to who they wish to have in a position of leadership.
Tory says he's confident any pro-Trump rally in Toronto will be peaceful. I'm Richard Southern.
And happening now, let's go live to CNN for continued coverage on the unrest in Washington.
Come together and send a message that our elections are free and fair and it's time to move forward. Now, behind the scenes, some of those detractors did have a strategy meeting. It's unclear what has come out of that, but behind closed doors just moments ago, Aaron, the senators have been briefed by top officials who are dealing with floor proceedings, including law enforcement officials. The expectation is this process will begin potentially by next hour in the House and Senate. Will they plow through the night? Will they get it done tonight? Uncertain, but both sides are making it very clear. The leaders on both sides saying the mob that came into the Capitol is not going to stop Congress from doing its work, and the ultimate work will be Joe Biden's electoral votes will be certified by Congress. Aaron.
All right, Manu, thank you very much. So I want to go to Caitlin Collins out front near the White House. So Caitlin, as all of this was happening, there was silence from the president, even as so many started to speak out. Right, he puts out a video eventually, where he talks about the stealing of the election, and then his tweet, which has now been removed by Twitter. They're not even saying it's disputed; they actually removed it. These are things that happen. Well, they're not things that happen, but what was happening with him today?
Well, I do just want to note in light of what you just said, Aaron, about them removing the president's tweet, they also just tweeted saying that his account will be locked for the next 12 hours following the removal of those tweets. That means we will not hear from the president on Twitter. It says that the tweets are not removed, the account will remain locked. That is the president of the United States Twitter account they're talking about. And so that means we may not hear from the president because just a few moments ago, the White House also called a lit, which means there are not going to be any more presidential appearances planned for the night. And that comes after a day where the president was wavering between telling this pro-Trump mob that breached the Capitol to go home, but Aaron also defending them and saying he understands where they're coming from, and this is what's going to happen when an election has been stolen, like he claims, of course, falsely, that his has. And we know this mob was fueled by the president's lies about the election, and now he is defending their actions today, breaching the Capitol, something that has not happened in over 200 years. And in light of what Mono just said about while we're waiting to see what these lawmakers are doing as they're getting back together, are we going to see any more of those planned objections by the president's Republican allies? I'm told the president is aware of those efforts, those discussions going on, that they may abandon this effort, and he does not want them to do so. He wants them to keep fighting, to keep trying to object to Joe Biden's win, delaying, of course, the inevitable, but just the idea that the president wants that to keep happening, despite what we all watched play out for the last several hours, and it's still happening on Capitol Hill, is remarkable. And it's coming as the president is more isolated probably than ever tonight inside the White House, because his staff is disagreeing with him about his response to this. Some of his Republican allies are disagreeing with the president on what's happening with this. His own staffers are coming out saying that they agree with the vice president and that he took courageous actions today. So you're seeing the president incredibly isolated. Now he doesn't have access to his Twitter account until at least 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, and we are not expecting to see him again at the White House for tonight, Aaron.
It's a pretty stunning development, though, for him, because as Caitlin is making clear, right, that's how he was going to communicate. That's how he always does communicate. He calls a lid because he can still keep communicating. So the president now blocked from Twitter for the next 12 hours. I want to go to Donnie O'Sullivan live outside the Capitol. And Donnie, you, I know, have been speaking to protesters throughout the day. And everybody wants to know who these people are. What are they doing? What are they planning to do now? What are they telling you?
Yeah, Aaron, I mean, I guess one of the questions I've been asking people here is, what is all of this for? What was all of this chaos and destruction and violence we saw today? What is it all supposed to achieve? And that goes back to conspiracy theories. It goes back to the notion, the BS that the President of the United States is pushing, claiming that he might be able to overturn this election, which, of course, he will not be able to. So people here, and Caitlin mentioned about the President's social media Twitter account being locked for the next 12 hours, which is an absolutely unprecedented move. We have not seen that from any social media company in the entire Trump presidency. But all of this does go back to social media and to the Trump media ecosystem. The people here are consuming media. They want to believe that Trump did not lose the election. They don't want to believe that Biden won it. And there is echo chambers online, and there are new and emerging alternative media outlets on YouTube, and even new cable, ostensibly posing as news networks, forwarding this election lie. And that's the basis of what we've seen here today. It's all a result of a conspiracy theory, and it's playing out on the streets of the nation's capital. Aaron?
All right, Donnie, thank you very much. Donnie's reporting, talking to people has been remarkable. I want to go now to Democratic Congressman Adam Smith. He was inside the Capitol, of course, as this all unfolded. He is chairman of the Armed Services Committee, and I know then that means, so you're going to be going back in. So tell me, if you can, where you are now, what's the status of the chambers and everybody actually going back in there at 8 o'clock? What do you understand is how this is going to work?
I'm in my office now in Rayburn, and we are very determined to go back in and go to work. I was in communication early today with leadership over at the Pentagon about the guards showing up and doing what they're doing now, which is clearing the Capitol so we can get back to work. Obviously, as your reporters have well documented, a very scary situation. I mean, scary situation to have the President of the United States inciting a riot. But we in Congress are determined to do our job, and Joe Biden will be president on January 20th, and it cannot come soon enough.
So the scene we did see today was sickening and disturbing, right? Armed stand-up on the House floor, right? Drawn guns literally at the door. I keep showing that picture. I think it's indelibly imprinted now on my mind. Officers injured. A window broken outside. They forced their way inside the chambers. Somebody sitting on the dais where Pence was literally presiding as the Vice President of the United States moments before that. Chairman, what went through your mind as you were literally in a room, being evacuated like you were in some other country that you never thought something like this would happen, did you?
Yeah. This morning I did. I actually went for a walk around the Capitol, and I could see, the rally was going on down at the, I think around the Washington Monument, and I saw the barriers that were up and the limited number of Capitol Police. I could see it then, but no, I never foresaw this. And what went through my mind was two things. First of all, like I said, to get in touch with, the people I know at the Pentagon, make sure, because I'd heard what they were going to do with the guard, and it was insufficient to what was happening. So number one, make sure we get the security personnel in to get this cleared. But number two, what was going through my mind is what's been going through my mind for a long time. Extremism is an enormous problem in this country. And Donald Trump is just, throwing matches all over, the powder kegs in this country. But look, the president, Donald Trump, is a narcissistic psychopath. Let's just be clear about that. He stumbled his way into the presidency. What he believes from a policy standpoint is irrelevant. He is an egotist. He cares about himself, period. The rest of the country that has enabled him is what we really need to work to fix. We need to understand the dangers of extremism. We've gotten to the point that we don't understand that the rule of law matters. What's important about democracy is you have rules. You play by those rules. It isn't that you get your way all the time, and that if you don't get your way, you have to fight until you do. That's not how it works. You play by the rules, and when it's over, you accept the outcome and you govern this country. We need to push back against extremism. The president is just, you get the point. Sorry.
Yeah, no. I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned you talked to defense leadership, and obviously you're chairman of the Armed Services Committee. So, I just want to ask you, is the president really was silent, and anything that he said included basically, way to go, guys, this is what happens? Mike Pence came out and said, this has to stop, and it has to stop now. But he's the one who said that, not the president. And we understand that, you talk about the National Guard being there, that Mike Pence is the one who spoke with the acting Secretary of Defense and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Not.
Breaking news, you're listening to continuing coverage of the chaos in Washington on 680 News. Also simulcast tonight on 570 News in Kitchener, News 95.7 in Halifax, and City News 101.1 in Ottawa. It is indeed a very dark night for American democracy. Pro-Trump protesters earlier clashing with police, breaching the Capitol building. Curfew now underway in the American Capitol. Various levels of law enforcement appear to be on standby, but the Trumpers are not in a hurry to leave the area. One woman shot and killed inside the U.S. Capitol building. The certification of the results of the election was underway, but now they're hoping to reconvene around 8 o'clock tonight.
And we are hearing tonight, Twitter has locked out Donald Trump from its platform for 12 hours. It says 3 of the president's tweets that were posted earlier today were removed for repeated and severe violations of its civic integrity policy. The social network says that means the account will be locked out for 12 hours following the removal of those tweets. If the tweets aren't removed, the account will remain locked. And happening now, let's go back to CNN for continued coverage of the unrest in Washington.
That's reassuring to me, okay? Because if the president was involved in that chain, number one, I don't trust that he wouldn't use the situation to seize power in an undemocratic, well, every coup is undemocratic, I suppose. But number two, he's incompetent. He doesn't care about making things work. He cares about his own ego, and he cares about himself. And we see that, with the way he handled the pandemic, with the way he's handling the vaccine right now. And here's a really important point that people understand is he relies on lies. And that's what Ted Cruz and all these people are doing now. All these things that they say about election irregularities are complete lies, complete and utter fabrications.
So, Chairman, I want to just interrupt you on that. Ask you one final question on that front. Have you heard anything about their meetings and their thoughts right now? Are they going to continue with their planned objections, or has this changed anything specifically for Senators Cruz, Senator Hawley?
I have not heard. I don't have any direct information on that. I think your reporting covered the analysis perfectly, so I don't have anything to add to that.
All right. Well, Chairman, I appreciate your time, and thank you very much for all of that information. We're all going to be watching all of you tonight. Thank you.
Thanks.
And I want to go now to Jonathan Martin. He joins me on the phone. He is the national political correspondent for the New York Times, familiar to most of you watching inside the Capitol right now. So Jonathan, you're with lawmakers.
Yes.
And, you're the chairman saying, look, they're planning to go back hopefully around 8 p.m. We don't know if there's going to be a shift in thinking, or if they're just going to continue, those who are planning to object, right, Cruz, Hawley, and just go ahead with their plan, or if this has changed anything. What are you hearing?
Well, Aaron, I can tell you, I've been with members of the Senate, Democrat and Republican, for about the last 4 hours in a secure location in the Capitol complex. I've talked to multiple senators, Democrat and Republican. 2 things. They are determined to reconvene tonight. They want to show some measure of solidarity in the face of this assault on the nation's seat of democracy. and they want to effectively go on with the show. Number two, there is great uncertainty as to whether or not these renegades who are in Mitch McConnell's caucus are going to again go forward with trying to stop the certification of the Electoral College. I can tell you there is very little appetite for that in the Republican ranks among those senators who are not part of that group. We've asked them multiple times. These senators, Holly and Cruz, who are gathered, they have not indicated what their plans are. Haven't heard from their aides. I think they're trying to figure out what their plan is. Obviously, this is a very fluid situation, and the perception of going forward after the Capitol itself has been breached is pretty difficult politically, to put it mildly.
Right, and of course the president failing to take this on. You know, Jonathan, as we're speaking, we're watching some of the crowd here begin to move, so we're keeping an eye on that. I'm going to go to Brian Todd, who's amidst them, in just a moment. But I did just want to ask you one other question. Yeah. I know you talked to Mitt Romney, and he, I guess, summoned you when you got to the secure location, and he said, quote, "This is what the president has caused today, this insurrection." Mitt Romney is not a man who throws words around without thinking about it. It is the correct word, but it is the word he chose to use.
It is.
Is that really the feeling you got among the Republicans?
Yes. I've never seen the kind of anger among European lawmakers as I saw today. Words like disgraceful, shameful, embarrassed. I've been covering Mitt Romney for about 15 years. I have never seen him so angry. His face, his voice, it was clear fury when he approached me. And again, that happened right after the Capitol was cleared. A moment of near chaos in the U.S. Capitol when a lot of lawmakers didn't know if their lives were at risk. And I think that's the issue here now with lawmakers is they felt for the first time their physical safety was correct in the Capitol building. And I think that changed things about it.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm speaking to Jonathan. If you're watching your screen, as I said, this is happening right now live. You see that line of riot police there, with the plastic riot gear blockers up. I want to go to Brian Todd, who is in the midst of this melee that we're seeing. Brian, tell me what you understand to be happening right now where you are.
And some Metropolitan Washington Police and members of the National Guard who have riot gear and shields have just moved in right over here by the reflecting pond, just on the west side of the Capitol, about 200 yards from the Capitol. They had let the crowd stay there for several minutes, and then they just moved with shields and riot gear and pushed people out. This crowd of law enforcement officers in the green jackets of the Metropolitan Washington Police had formed a line to the left. They just pushed that line over, and they were chanting, "Move, move," to get the protesters to leave.
Breaking news, we continue our coverage of the chaos erupting in and around the Capitol building in Washington, where a curfew is now in effect. 680's Madison Fitzpatrick joins us live with a rundown of what has happened so far. Madison.
Yes, Sarah. Well, the National Guard troops and riot police are on the ground at the U.S. Capitol working to evacuate these protesters from the area. Police have used flashbangs to move the crowds back to prevent them from retaking the Capitol. Right now, I'm seeing the riot police just standing kind of arm in arm in a line, riot police behind them as well as the National Guard. Like I said, protesters, they're still on the Capitol grounds, even though the mayor of Washington has enacted a 6 p.m. curfew tonight. It will last until 7 a.m. tomorrow. Obviously, these people have gathered, have ignored the curfews, and they're still outside of the building, still grouped together, waving their flags, chanting and cheering. Now, in a speech this afternoon, President-elect Joe Biden pleaded to Americans for calm.
At this hour, our democracy is under an unprecedented assault, unlike anything we've seen in modern times. An assault on the citadel of liberty, the Capitol itself.
And after continuous calls by Democrats and Republicans for President Trump to tell his supporters to stand down, Trump finally released a video asking protesters to go home, but still repeating his false claims that the election had been stolen from him.
I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us, but you have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order. We have to respect our great people in law and order. We don't want anybody hurt.
Meantime, Twitter says Trump's account has been locked for 12 hours, and future violations will result in permanent suspension. This after he tweeted multiple things this afternoon. Obviously, like we're seeing, that video that he posted on Twitter, finally telling them to go home, but obviously still repeating these false claims that Twitter has flagged before. Now, after everything that we've seen this afternoon, we are hearing that this historic day has not remained peaceful, as a woman that was shot in the chest on Capitol grounds early this afternoon has now died in hospital. At this time, it's unknown who exactly fired their weapon. Stay with 680 News as we continue to cover the latest developments out of Washington. I'm Madison Fitzpatrick.
Breaking news on the continuing coverage of the chaos in Washington. Heard on 680 News, as well simulcast tonight on 570 News in Kitchener, News 95.7 in Halifax, and City News 101 in Ottawa. A very dark, tense night in Washington. Pro-Trump protesters clashing with police breaching the Capitol building. Curfew underway. And various levels of law enforcement appear to be in a holding pattern right now. A woman shot and killed earlier today inside the U.S. Capitol building. The certification of the results of the election were recessed, but they're now hoping to reconvene at 8 o'clock tonight. Time now for 680 Business. From the Midtown Home Office, Richard Southern.
Well, let me turn to business tonight. I think one of the most interesting stories developing is what Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube have done in the wake of this situation in Washington, D.C., and that's remove a video posted by Donald Trump in which he urged his supporters who stormed the U.S. Capitol to go home, but he also repeated false accusations about the integrity of the U.S. presidential election. YouTube and Facebook pulling that video down, Twitter putting a warning on it. We've also seen Twitter lock U.S. President Trump's account for 12 hours, preventing him from tweeting any further. So these are our social media companies who had fallen under a lot of criticism about their lack of inaction when it came to Trump claims up until now. This certainly very much definitive action from the likes of Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. Market reaction to the situation in Washington, D.C., you ask, must have had investors selling. No, and it didn't. The Dow closed at an all-time high. The Dow closing up 437 points to 30,829, with investors to a large extent looking past the situation in D.C. and looking to political clarity in the United States, that being the Georgia runoff elections. The Democrats now control, it seems, all levels of government, and that could see more fiscal stimulus being passed. We saw cannabis stocks rally because it could see President-elect Biden pass legalization on a national level for cannabis in the state. So Dow up 437, S&P up 21 points. The NASDAQ fell 78. The TSX higher today, up 145 to 17,828. And the Canadian dollar moving higher tonight to 78.93 cents U.S. More from Washington next on 680 News.
So checking tonight's forecast, cloudy and 0 degrees. Overnight mainly cloudy down to -4. Tomorrow morning with sun and cloud -3. Tomorrow afternoon partly cloudy and -1. And then on Friday, mainly sunny, cold morning. -9, but it'll feel like -16, -3 in the afternoon, at times feeling like -9. 680 News Time, the double tones, 7:30.
Number 1 for news in Toronto. This is 680 News.
It's Wednesday, January the 6th. Good evening. I'm Judy Friedman.
I'm Scott Burnett. Here's what's making news right now.
A historic scene in Washington, D.C. as Trump supporters breached the walls of the Capitol building and forced their way onto the floors of the Senate, causing lawmakers to evacuate.
U.S. President-elect Joe Biden says what happened on Capitol Hill was not a protest, it was insurrection.
I'm genuinely shocked and saddened that our nation has come to such a dark moment.
Intense violence in the Capitol building sparks intense political reaction.
Any other country this was happening, it would be called a coup.
While in Georgia, victory for the Democrats, who will take control of the U.S. Senate.
The Raptors take on the Suns in Phoenix, and the Leafs continue training camp with an injured forward. Sports at 45. Investors look largely past the situation in Washington, D.C. The Dow closes at a record high, up more than 400 points. Business at 56. 7:31.
Time for traffic and weather together on the ones. Checking the drive, here's Carlin Donahue.
Scott, Judy, good evening. Well, what a day it's been in the news. Just very heavy. But on our major routes today, it's been the complete opposite. We haven't had anything going on. So busy news day, easy traffic day. We don't really have anything happening on the major routes right now, except if you're on the West 401 approaching Kiel in the Express. We do have a left lane blocked with a stalled vehicle. Now, looks like there is 3 different spots where there's emergency crews on site for this stall. I'm not sure why, but we have one in the left lane, and then about 100 meters up, there's another tow truck in the left lane, and then 100 meters further than that, there's another tow truck in the left lane. So I don't know what they're doing, but they are there. They're not causing a delay, but visual distraction for sure. So just be careful. That's it. That's all that's going on. City streets are clear as well, and that's pretty much the only thing on the major routes. Your next report's at 7:41 with the forecast. Natasha Rams, the high.
-4 degrees. That's our overnight low with mainly cloudy skies. We'll see a bit of sun in the morning with a wind chill of -9 to start. More sun through the afternoon and a little bit cooler than today with a high of -1, wind chill -6. Through the night tonight, we're down to a low of -4 degrees.
Downtown Toronto right now, partly cloudy, 1 degree, feeling like -4. 680 news time, 7:32.
Breaking news from Washington, where a curfew has been in effect since 6 o'clock in the U.S. Capitol as an unprecedented day continues to play out.
We begin our coverage of the protests on Capitol Hill with 680's Madison Fitzpatrick. She joins us live now with a rundown of today's events. Madison.
Yeah, Scott, well, arguably one of the most secure buildings in America was breached today. It all started when thousands of people stormed Capitol Hill and eventually and incredibly made their way inside. We saw little police presence at first, and as we watched protesters light smoke bombs in the stairwells, bombard doors, smash windows, entering officials' personal offices. I saw a sheet that said, "We will not back down" on Nancy Pelosi's desks. They even entered the chamber floor itself. We saw many people taking selfies, actually in the seat exactly where Nancy Pelosi and Mike Pence, Vice President Mike Pence, were sitting earlier this afternoon. It's very jarring to see these photos, as I'm sure many of you have seen as well. We saw people dangling from the top of the rafters. Very, very disturbing and jarring photos coming out of Capitol Hill this afternoon. But right now, as curfew has started, the National Guard and riot police remain on the grounds of the U.S. Capitol, something that we didn't see earlier this afternoon. I'm seeing many people still walking on the grounds. The guards and the riot police are there, kind of just walking, slowly pushing back protesters out of the area. Now, the curfew enacted by the mayor of Washington will last until 6 a.m. tomorrow. Capitol Police now say that the Capitol is secure, and Nancy Pelosi says the electoral count will resume tonight at 8. So just in a half an hour, things will start to resume there. Meantime, Twitter is saying that Trump's account has been locked for 12 hours as future violations will result in permanent suspension. And this comes after Trump was repeatedly making claims, again, insisting the election was stolen from him. He did, in fact, tweet out a video early this afternoon about his supporters to stand down, but definitely something to keep your eye on there. Now, after everything that we've been seeing this afternoon, we are hearing that this historic day has not remained peaceful, as reports of multiple officers injured in the clashes with the protesters. And in fact, a woman that was shot in the chest on Capitol grounds has died in hospital. Again, it's unclear who exactly fired the weapon. Stay with 680 News as we continue our coverage on the latest developments out of Washington this evening. I'm Madison Fitzpatrick.
U.S. President-elect Joe Biden and President Trump with plenty to say about today's events. We continue our team coverage with 680's Phil Martino, who joins us now live. Phil.
Judy, Joe Biden says storming the Capitol, smashing windows, and threatening the safety of elected officials is not protest, it's insurrection.
The world's watching. Like so many other Americans, I am genuinely shocked and saddened that our nation, so long the beacon of light and hope for democracy, come to such a dark moment.
Donald Trump addressed his supporters in a minute-long video on Twitter, beginning by telling them he knows they're hurt because they had an election stolen from them.
This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you. You're very special.
Trump's tweet was initially flagged on Twitter. It has now been removed, Twitter says, as a result of the unprecedented and ongoing violent situation in Washington, D.C. We have required the removal of 3 Donald Trump tweets that were posted earlier today for repeated and severe violations of our civic integrity policy. Facebook has also removed the Trump video, saying we removed it because, on balance, we believe it contributes to rather than diminishes the risk of ongoing violence. Phil Martino, 680 News.
There is political reaction pouring in from both sides of the border, with most condemning today's events in Washington. We join our Mark Douglas.
Political reaction to the violence in the Capitol building, perhaps best summed up by Democratic Congresswoman Karen Bass.
This is just so appalling and so embarrassing to our country.
But there are stronger condemnations, including from Republicans like Congressman Adam Kinzinger.
An attempt to occupy the Capitol, to intimidate members of Congress. Any other country this was happening, it would be called a coup. We'd call it that, so that's what it is.
Going even further, the governor of Vermont, Phil Scott, another Republican, now calling for Trump to resign or be removed from office. And Democrat Ilhan Omar says she's already drawing up new articles of impeachment against Donald Trump. Omar also vowing, along with others, that Congress will tonight continue the process of reading out the Electoral College votes and declaring Joe Biden as the next president. Meanwhile, in Georgia, a different kind of declaration, as John Ossoff has won the second of 2 Senate runoff votes that now gives control of the U.S. Senate to the Democrats. I'm Mark Douglas.
Now, here at home, we're hearing from the Prime Minister, Premier Ford, and Mayor Tory. 680's Richard Southern continues our coverage.
Well, let's start with Prime Minister Trudeau. In a written statement, the PM said, quote, Canadians are deeply disturbed and saddened by the attack on democracy in the United States. He goes on to say that, quote, violence will never succeed in overruling the will of the people. Strong words as well from Ontario Premier Doug Ford, who said, quote, the situation in Washington is absolutely disgraceful. The peaceful transfer of power is crucial to any democracy, and I'm incredibly disappointed with what we are witnessing in the United States. Again, that Premier Ford. John Tory said he's also saddened by the situation in the States. I asked the mayor of Toronto if he's concerned about pro-Trump protests in this city turning violent. And he said he's not, because protests up until this point have been peaceful.
If that's the way people do things in this city, and I think if there are protests that have to do with Mr. Trump or anybody else, I'm confident that the spirit of those protests will be the same.
Gauging local political reaction. Richard Southern, 680 News.
Canada's ambassador to the U.S. is urging all Canadians in Washington to follow the advice of local authorities. Ambassador Kristen Hillman took to Twitter to call for calm and says she and her staff are monitoring the developments on Capitol Hill very closely. Hillman adding all staff at the Canadian Embassy are safe and accounted for.
In 30 seconds, a check of gas prices.
Why are you asking them about Trump's vote? You have a choice between 2 extremes, staying in hibernation mode or enjoying X mode in a Subaru. X mode will have you taking a winter with...
Votre population est polarisée, à quel point le professeur Daniel Marien, qui enseigne à l'Université Central Florida, nous disait aujourd'hui, les Américains vivent dans des mondes parallèles.
Absolument, on a 2 mondes parce qu'on a 2 sortes de médias, on a 2 narratifs qui sont complètement éloignés. L'un est basé sur la réalité et l'autre sur l'opinion. Et pour moi, quand je veux savoir ce qui est la vérité, en fait, je lis les médias de l'étranger. Hein, je regarde le monde, par exemple, pour voir ce que le reste du monde pense des Américains en ce moment. Une histoire de mondialisme, ça n'a rien à voir. C'est la haine. C'est le fléau de la haine. Et c'est les gens qui ne supportent pas que le démocrate gratis.
Oh, I would feel a lot better if I could feel this bad air every time I get in and out of my house.
Les droits des gens de couleur, les droits des gens homosexuels, quoi que ce soit. Ils veulent garder un ancien régime. Et je suis désolée.
What are you talking about? I thought we were talking about the Congress getting stopped.
Le dernier a embrassé le
Franklin's have all sorts of opinions on this. Something along the lines of, well, if you're going to have a revolution, do it right.
Ça n'a rien à voir avec l'économie. C'est la haine, c'est le racisme, c'est le antisémitisme.
Oui.
Voyons ce qui s'est passé hier à Georgia.
Aujourd'hui, oui, les deux victoires, dont une historique, hein, parce qu'il y aura un premier sénateur afro-américain élu à Washington, en provenance de la Géorgie. Déjà que ça faisait longtemps qu'on avait vu aussi la Géorgie appuyer un candidat démocrate à la présidence. Madame Kennedy, ce qui s'est passé aujourd'hui, c'est le dérapage d'un moment, parce que là, c'est allé loin quand même, là. Des protestations, théories du complot, il peut y en avoir, il y en a dans bien des pays et tout ça, mais investir le Parlement, la maison du peuple, interrompre une reconnaissance constitutionnelle, là, ça va loin. Il y a eu les mots d'insurrection, entre autres. Bon. Est-ce que ce sont des marginaux, selon vous, ou des petits nombres d'extrémistes, comme le disait Joe Biden, là, qui est à l'origine de ça, ou c'est plus profond?
Non, c'est beaucoup plus profond qu'un petit, parce qu'il y a des gens qui n'ont pas pu se déplacer jusqu'à Washington. Si vous traînez dans certains lieux sur Twitter, ou tous les liens de médias, radio, des choses comme ça, vous allez voir qu'il y a beaucoup de gens qui font ça, parce que, comme je vous ai dit, ils ont peur, c'est la haine, ils se sont traqués, comme on dit dans ma poésie, quoi, traqués et frustrés. Et je vous dis un truc, hein, lorsque la vote n'est pas supprimée, on a les résultats qu'on a eu hier en Géorgie. Et c'est ça qui fait peur aux gens. On est dans un moment de changement profond et c'est comme tout grand changement social, quoi. Il y a des gens qui font des émeutes parce qu'ils ne supportent pas le changement et c'est triste, mais c'est pas du tout une surprise, quoi.
Si vous en aviez, en terminant, Mme Kennedy, si vous en aviez l'occasion, vous, le 20 janvier prochain, est-ce que vous iriez à Washington pour l'investiture, la sermentation de Joe Biden?
Absolument pas, non. D'abord, on a toujours le Covid ici. Alors,
oui, bien sûr. Ça s'entend.
Il faut pas se déplacer. Mais non, c'est trop dangereux. J'ai la famille qui vit au banlieue de Washington et je savais qu'il était super éloigné.
Non.
Je l'aurais appelé ce matin pour dire.
More. Nothing was taken from the home. Drake tweeted Tuesday that he's doing great and doctors are taking good care of him. Jason Nathanson, ABC News.
Still to come on 680 News, we're following continuing coverage of today's turmoil on Capitol Hill in Washington. That and your sports update coming up next.
This is 680 News. One radio station can work wonders for your business, but two stations can put you in a different league. Sarah Hugo, second-generation owner of Lazy Boy Furniture Galleries.
We've been working with CHFI for over a decade, and our account manager suggested that maybe we add 680 News to the mix, and we've seen great results through adding that extra demographic. The importance of having both stations, for us, we feel it is best for our business and it gets people through the door.
So you rely on your CHFI and 680 News account managers to play
mirrors. And the dominant themes over and over again are that women and men make life a hell on earth.
I mean, how funny did Bergman ever get?
In terms of ha funny, the only time he ever actually tried to make a real sort of rib tickler was this movie All These Women, which was
Didn't that sound like Patrick Flannery off of CRI? Okay, that was either CBC.
Hello, my name is Tiffany Kuritana Aylik. We are Kapsa. You're listening to Reclaimed on CBC Radio.
Did you not just speak in French there for a second? Everything else wasn't going on that deep. How about this? Okay, this is a little fun. I can't focus on this music at all. Crappy music to listen to while you slave away.
I've been moving them out. They're stealing with me, then they got the blues in the pouch.
Je souligne qu'il ne reste que 14 jours, mais à mon avis,
14 jours. Okay, hold on, we found it.
Présidence, il ne devait pas être autorisé à passer une autre minute de plus en tant que président, parce qu'il a fait aujourd'hui. Nancy Pelosi pourrait convoquer une session d'urgence de la Chambre ce soir pour les destituer. Mitch McConnell pourrait convoquer le Sénat.
Moral, mais au plan politique, est-ce que ce serait habile? Est-ce que ça ne ferait pas jeter de l'huile sur un feu déjà bien attisé?
Mais vous savez, il y a deux groupes qui auraient intérêt à ce que ça se fasse. Les démocrates en premier lieu, ils ont tenté de le démettre déjà dans le passé, et les républicains modérés, les républicains qui ne dépendent pas, qui n'ont pas défendu farouchement M. Trump dans le passé. Par exemple, des gens comme le vice-président Pence, qui a toujours fait son devoir, qui n'a pas rébellé contre M. Trump, mais qui n'a pas contre refusé de jouer son jeu. Des gens comme Mike Pompeo, le secrétaire des Affaires étrangères, des gens qui ont contrôlé M. Trump pendant qu'il était contrôlable. Manifestement, aujourd'hui, il n'est pas contrôlable. Depuis les élections, il n'a rien fait à part tenter de délégitimer le résultat. Il a perdu la boule. J'irais jusqu'à dire que sa maladie mentale de narcissisme s'est empirée.
Puisque vous allez jusque-là, est-ce qu'il y aurait cette possibilité, je vous pose la question parce que vous êtes avocat, il y aurait cette possibilité de la section 4 du 25e amendement? Je suis dans votre raisonnement. Oui, les questions d'incapacité du président d'exercer ses pouvoirs et de remplir les devoirs de sa charge.
Ça prendrait une lettre du vice-président qui est signée, qui est ratifiée par le cabinet de M. Trump. Est-ce que c'est opportun? À mon avis, pas du tout opportun, parce qu'un acte comme celui-là, un acte qui n'est pas ratifié par les deux chambres du Congrès, cet acte-là serait apte à encourager les idiots qui ont protesté aujourd'hui à commettre d'autres actes de violence. Je vous rappelle que, je ne sais pas si vous avez on a découvert une bombe aujourd'hui.
If you're gonna do some sort of revolution, cool thing,
une bombe a été découverte. Donc, il y a ces gens-là, ils détestent non seulement les démocrates qui ont soi-disant volé les élections, mais ils détestent aussi les républicains modérés. Ce sont deux groupes qui ont intérêt à destituer le président, mais si par contre on invoquait l'article, le 25e amendement, à mon avis, il y aurait des actes de violence tels qu'on n'a jamais vu au pays.
Donc, vous faites réellement un lien entre le comportement de Donald Trump et ce dérapage antidémocratique. Là j'entends la prise d'assaut du... Il n'y a peut-être pas juste manifesté de
le rassemblement aujourd'hui s'est produit uniquement parce que Trump l'a réclamé. Les foules se sont rassemblées en premier lieu devant la Maison-Blanche. C'est Trump qui leur a dit « Allez au Capitole ». C'est Trump qui, même dans son petit discours d'1 minute... à la suite de l'invitation de M. Biden, c'est Trump qui a continué à dire on va jamais concéder, on va jamais lâcher. Allez chez vous, mais je vous aime beaucoup, il a dit, je vous aime beaucoup. Alors, il continue à les commenter.
Qu'est-ce que vous pensez en terminant de ces républicains qui, aujourd'hui, comme Mitch McConnell, disaient non, écoutez, on doit ratifier, là, quand même. Là. Franchement, il y a une constitution et tout ça. J'ai écouté son discours en début d'après-midi, mais de ces républicains qui ont laissé quand même aller Donald Trump un bon moment. Je vous dis ça parce que le chercheur Julien Toureil, à qui je vais parler dans un instant, lui, remettait ces républicains-là à leur responsabilité dès le lendemain du 3 novembre. Il y en a bien.
Moi, j'ai pas tendance à les blâmer. À mon avis, on doit beaucoup de respect au poste de président. Lorsque quelqu'un est président, on lui doit du respect. Par contre, les gens comme Ted Cruz, les gens comme Josh Hawley, des sénateurs qui s'étaient dit prêts à contester le vote des grands électeurs, ces gens-là, à mon avis, viennent d'endommager énormément leur chance en 2024. Ces gens-là jouaient le jeu, ils voulaient attirer les supporters de M. Trump en 2024. À mon avis, ces supporters, il y en aura très, très peu d'ici quelques semaines. Et ces gens-là viennent de se couler.
Monsieur Cross, merci beaucoup d'avoir été là ce soir. Il n'y a pas de quoi, bonne soirée. Merci, bonne soirée à vous. Michael Cross, professeur émérite à l'École de droit de l'Université George Mason en Virginie. Nous poursuivons cette émission spéciale du service d'information de Radio-Canada sur ce chaos aujourd'hui à Washington. Manifestation qui ne s'en est pas tenue à être pacifique aux abords du Capitole et à l'intérieur même. Une personne a perdu la vie, a succombé à ses blessures. Le processus de reconnaissance de la victoire électorale de Joe Biden doit reprendre ce soir au Capitole, qui a été sécurisé par la Garde nationale, qui était appuyée sur place, la police du Capitole. Et Joe Biden sera donc président des États-Unis à compter du 20 janvier à midi. Et il aura avec lui un Sénat contrôlé par les démocrates, son propre parti, après les 2 victoires annoncées par les médias aux élections sénatoriales de la Géorgie. Et la vice-présidente Kamala Harris étant présidente du Sénat, bien, la majorité penchera du côté des démocrates. Julien Toureille, chercheur à l'Observatoire sur les États-Unis de la chaire Raoul d'Endurant, n'empêche devant quel pays Joe Biden va se retrouver le 20 janvier?
Il va se retrouver devant un pays éminemment divisé. Alors il le sait, Joe Biden, c'est d'ailleurs l'une des raisons pour lesquelles il s'est lancé dans la campagne à l'élection présidentielle pour essayer de mettre un terme à cette division et à cette violence qu'il voyait poindre dans son pays dès les débuts finalement de la présidence de Donald Trump. Il faut quand même se souvenir qu'à la fin de l'été, ou au cours de l'été, au mois d'août 2017, les événements de Charlottesville en Virginie, où Donald Trump, face à un rassemblement de la droite extrême et à des contestations des mouvements un petit peu plus de gauche, avait joué le jeu de l'apaisement finalement de la branche la plus extrémiste des républicains ou de l'électorat américain, et donc avait incité Joe Biden à se lancer dans la course. Et son diagnostic qu'il faisait il y a près de 2 ans maintenant, avant de se lancer dans cette course-là, avec les événements d'aujourd'hui, se voit tout à fait confirmé, et ça présente tout un défi pour sa présidence. Il en est parfaitement conscient. Maintenant, est-ce qu'il sera capable de réinstaurer cette décence qu'il appelle de ses voeux dans cette vie politique américaine? Lui, on peut imaginer qu'il aura à cœur de le faire. Est-ce qu'il aura des partenaires autant au sein du Parti démocrate qu'évidemment chez les Républicains pour le faire? Ça reste à voir.
Oui, parce que vous avez entendu Daniel Marien, professeur en Floride, un peu plus tôt, lui qui nous disait « Non, moi je suis pas d'accord avec sa lecture de dire que… »
Sunny with a high of -3. Saturday, partly cloudy and a high of 0. And Sunday, mainly sunny with a high of -1. No significant precip on the way until early next week. Tonight, we're down to that low of -4 degrees.
Downtown Toronto right now, partly cloudy, 2 degrees, feeling like -2. At Pearson, 1 degree and a partly cloudy sky. The wind chill, feeling like -4.
Coming up at the top of the hour, the latest on continuing team coverage of the unprecedented events that have unfolded today in Washington, where pro-Trump supporters stormed the Capitol building in protest of the certification of the U.S. election by Congress. Right now, riot police are out in full force attempting to get the remaining protesters to leave the area. The certification process set to resume at 8 o'clock tonight, so in about 6 minutes from now, we'll bring you the very latest as soon as it happens.
680 News Time, 7:54.
What does it feel like to play Lotto 649? Well, with an upcoming jackpot of an estimated $6 million, just having a ticket feels a lot like that moment between.
I didn't. But if you're ever making videos, sometimes you keep recording, keep talking
So
recording.
get that 649 feeling. Buy your ticket today to feel the anticipation that comes with a chance to win a jackpot of an estimated $6 million, plus the guaranteed $1 million prize.
The big story. I'm your host, Jordan Heath Rawlings. What we do and don't know about the new COVID variant. Listen at the Big Story podcast.
Well, that was yesterday's news, bro.
We continue to follow breaking news from south of the border after U.S. President Donald Trump supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol today. Twitter and Facebook have now removed the video posted by the president.
In President Trump's video put out during the height of the unrest at the Capitol, he told people to go home, but he also continued to make unproven claims about the election. Facebook and Twitter have removed the video, calling it an emergency situation, saying the platforms prohibit incitement and calls for violence. Twitter initially left up the video without the ability to like, respond, or retweet it. Then it removed the video along with a follow-up tweet from the president. Alex Stone, ABC News.
Business is next.
How was your run?
Incredible. My new fit from TSC is great. And I feel so rested lately with our new Casper mattress. Maintaining a healthy lifestyle is easy with TSC.
Living well looks good on you. Shop TSC.ca. Today's shopping choice.
I love working out at home.
Our Echelon rower from TSC is awesome.
TSC's interest-free easy pays make it so affordable.
Yeah, my new Apple AirPods are great for meetings and for working out.
Living well looks good on you. Shop TSC.ca. Today's shopping choice.
We all know family and friends have been recommending Capital Direct for years, and now with the advent of FlexiLine or traditional equity loan, your options are even better. Compared to the banks these days, Capital Direct's lending criteria.
Unis de la chaire Raoul Dandurand. Bon, alors on va commencer, Manon, on retrouve Manon Glowinski, ma collègue, avec les derniers développements à Washington.
Oui, ben en fait, ce qu'on surveille, c'est de savoir si le couvre-feu décrété depuis 18 heures par la mairesse du district de Columbia est respecté. Les images en direct sur le site du Washington Post nous montrent énormément de policiers dans les rues. Et ces policiers qu'on a cherchés pendant une bonne partie de l'après-midi. Alors là, ils sont là, on voit des véhicules comme des autobus, probablement pour essayer d'embarquer les derniers manifestants qui seraient encore dans les rues, mais je ne vois aucun civil. Il y a eu 13 arrestations, par contre, de la part des policiers du district de Columbia. Il y a déjà des appels, Jean-Sébastien, à une enquête pour savoir comment il se fait que ça a été aussi facile de prendre d'assaut le Capitole, parce que vraiment, je suis certaine que beaucoup de représentants, beaucoup de sénateurs ont été très surpris. Ils s'imaginaient qu'il y avait des mesures de sécurité qui fermaient les portes et qui fermaient les fenêtres de façon beaucoup plus stricte. Et il y a, bon, vous l'évoquez avec le professeur Krauss, ces demandes de destitution, elles viennent entre autres des démocrates d'Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez qui s'est exprimé au cours de la dernière heure. Et vous vous demandiez, Jean-Sébastien, si ça allait faire changer d'avis certains républicains dans le processus de confirmation de Joe Biden. Et bien, il y en a au moins une, Cathy McMorris-Rodgers, représentante républicaine de l'État de Washington, qui dit qu'après les événements d'aujourd'hui, elle ne s'oppose plus du tout aux résultats du collège électoral comme elle avait l'intention de le faire donc avant.
Et puis avant qu'on se laisse, Manon, parlons de cette autre nouvelle combien importante, mais qui passait dessus, je l'ai évoqué quelques fois, mais le démocrate John Ossoff pour le deuxième siège de sénateur aujourd'hui.
Absolument. Ça a pris un petit peu plus de temps dans le cas de John Ossoff contre David Perdue, le sénateur sortant, parce que, en fait, même si on avait presque tous les résultats, il y a cette règle en Georgie qui dit qu'à moins de 1%, on doit faire un recomptage. Alors là, John Ossoff, il est passé au-dessus de ce 0,5%. Il est à 0,8% de différence avec M. Perdue, David Perdue, 32 000, presque 33 000 voix de différence.
And provide homeless kids with a warm bed, hot meal, and a better future. Visit CovenantHouseToronto.ca to donate.
Oh!
Ciao, I'm Dominic Benucci. Next time you order, try our charcoal-infused pizza and enjoy a lighter and airier pizza experience. It may just become your new go-to favorite. Think Italian, taste the difference.
Walmart is the #1 place to save money on groceries. Save $1 on a Michelina's frozen entree. Only 80 cents. Save money, live better.
Sub-zero in Richmond Hill tonight, 2 degrees, and partly cloudy in downtown Toronto. Feels like -1. You're listening to 680 News, also being simulcast tonight on Fox 70 News in Kitchener, News 95.7 in Halifax, and City News 101.1 in Ottawa. 680 News time 8 o'clock.
26. Good evening, I'm Scott Burnett.
And I'm Judy Freeman. Here's what's making news this hour.
Historic scene in Washington, D.C. as Trump supporters breached the walls of the Capitol building
They
and forced
referenced
their way onto the floor of the
thing.
Senate, causing lawmakers to evacuate. Joe Biden says democracy is under unprecedented assault after protesters stormed Capitol Hill.
The scenes of chaos at the Capitol do not reflect the true America.
Violence in the Capitol building coming not just from the Democrats, but the Republicans as well, including former Governor of New Jersey, Chris Christie.
The president
The following program is a recording of a live broadcast transmitted 7 a.m. Beijing time. Examining the events that impact and shape China and the rest of the world. This is the Beijing Hour, 1 hour of news and information brought to you every weekday. Now here's your host,
Shane Bigham with you on this Thursday, January the 7th, 2021. You're listening to the Beijing Hour, live from the Chinese capital. On today's program, protesters stormed the U.S. Capitol, delaying the count of Electoral College votes and certification of President-elect Joe Biden's victory in November. More COVID cases have been found in Hebei province as mass testing continues.
We set up over 5,000 sample collection points. We also set up a few more sampling collection points in those areas with larger populations.
We look at China's newly amended national defense law. In business, China issues a guideline for boosting consumer spending. In sports, Man City is back in the English League Cup final. In culture and entertainment, the Grammys have been postponed. Now today's top stories. Protesters have breached the U.S. Capitol, forcing the proceedings to count electoral college votes cast in the 2020 presidential election to come to a halt. The U.S. Congress convened earlier in the day to certify President-elect Joe Biden's victory over Donald Trump. Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser has ordered a citywide curfew in the wake of the incident. And for the latest, Guang Hao spoke with Jagri Davi in Washington, D.C.
What's going on now in the U.S. Capitol?
So we're seeing some absolutely extraordinary scenes. Protesters stormed the Capitol building. There were reports of gunshots inside and one person being shot. The tear gas being deployed. The House floor was evacuated. The Vice President Mike Pence was evacuated from the building. Washington, D.C. police chief says protesters deployed chemical irritants on police to get into the building. The entire Washington, D.C. National Guard has been activated. The D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser has enacted a curfew that starts in 45 minutes' time. President-elect Joe Biden was supposed to speak on the economy. Instead, he gave an address telling the crowds in D.C. to pull back. President Trump finally released a video telling protesters to go home, but repeated his baseless claims of election fraud. So right now we've got law enforcement out on the streets of the U.S. Capitol trying to get protesters off the streets and trying to restore law and order in the city.
When may the counting process restart?
For the moment, we don't know. The police are moving crowds away from the Capitol. They've
On the ground of the U.S. Capitol, they say the Capitol is secure, and the electoral count is set to resume in just moments.
Metro, the DC Metro that's been being shut down early. So we're not really sure at this stage when the counting process will resume.
Then how will it affect the transfer of power?
Well, it has delayed the process for sure. Normally, this would be a ceremonial process with the vice president just opening envelopes and certifying results from each state. But we are still expecting the transfer of power to happen. Indeed, Joe Biden said to reporters a question after his address. He came back to the stage after a question was thrown at him, and he said, "I'm not concerned about my safety, security, or the inauguration. I'm not concerned." We saw when proceedings were underway in Congress that Mike Pence, the vice president, wasn't going to obstruct the proceedings, despite coming under intense pressure from the president to do so. Well, let's see what happens to the other Republican challenge, to the Electoral College vote ratification. But we are seeing more former Trump staffers coming out and condemning what we're seeing in the capital today, and we're also hearing them coming out and saying that
unfortunately, reports of multiple officers injured in the clashes with the protesters, and a woman was shot in the chest on Capitol grounds. That she has died in hospital now. As we have been saying in our reports, it's unclear right now who fired the shots, if it was a fellow protester or if it was any police officer.
That transfer of power process.
That was Tagrudi Davi in Washington, D.C., reporting on the protests at the U.S. Capitol. U.S. media outlets have projected Democrat Jon Ossoff is on track to defeat Republican incumbent David Perdue in the U.S. Senate runoff in Georgia. Ossoff is projected to be the winner in the second of the two Georgia Senate runoffs. In the other, Democrat Raphael Warnock has been projected to win against incumbent Republican Senator Kelly Loeffler. Ossoff's win would allow Democrats to split the 100-seat U.S. Senate 50-50 with Republicans, with Vice President-elect Kamala Harris in position to cast the tie-breaking vote. U.S. President-elect Joe Biden is expected to nominate federal appeals judge Merrick Garland to be the next U.S. Attorney General. Garland serves as a judge in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit and has been on the federal appeals bench since 1997. In 2016, Garland was President Barack Obama's Supreme Court nominee.
Everything that person has
the Republican-controlled U.S. Senate. Prior to becoming a judge, Garland worked as a federal prosecutor and held other key posts at the Justice Department. The New York Stock Exchange says it'll delist 3 Chinese telecoms in a second U-turn on the matter in less than a week. The exchange reversed its decision from Monday not to delist the companies a day after U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin disagreed with the NYSE chief. Managing partner at BDA Partners, Ewan Relly, says the move is not the right approach and has been costly for U.S. institutional investors.
This is bad government policy which has been poorly implemented. I absolutely recognize what may be very valid national security concerns about Chinese telecom companies, but I don't think that forcing NYSE to delist them is the right approach.
The New York Stock Exchange said on Monday that it would not delist China Mobile, China Telecom, and China Unicom Hong Kong, reversing a decision that was made on December 31st. U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order back in November, barring American investment in some Chinese companies.
Well,
China says it'll take necessary measures to protect the legitimate rights and interests of companies after the U.S. president signed the order banning U.S. transactions with 8 Chinese software applications. The Chinese Foreign Ministry called the move another example of the U.S. Of using power to crack down on foreign companies. The targeted Chinese companies include Alipay, WeChat Pay, and Tencent QQ. The executive order will come into effect in 45 days, shortly after U.S. President-elect Joe Biden is scheduled to be inaugurated. Reports say the order and its implementation have not been discussed with the Biden administration.
Well,
China and the Democratic Republic of the Congo have vowed to deepen bilateral cooperation. The 2 sides have signed a memorandum of understanding for the Belt and Road Initiative during Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi's visit to the African country. Gao Jia.
Relative humidity, 72%. Still joined by Senator Sanders. I'm sorry to interrupt. Have you ever seen or lived through a darker day in America?
Is this Alex Trebek?
No, it really is very, very sad for our democracy, for our country. And it really speaks to the fact that we have a president who not only is a pathological liar, somebody who lost an election by 7 million votes, lost the Electoral College, but he is prepared, Anderson, to do
I'm sorry, sir. I have to go to Senator McConnell is speaking.
I'm going to get back to the
I'll
talk to you later. All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Or threats. We will not bow to lawlessness or intimidation. We are back at our posts. We will discharge our duty under the Constitution and for our nation. And we're going to do it tonight. This afternoon, Congress began the process of honoring the will of the American people and counting the Electoral College votes. We fulfill this solemn duty every 4 years for more than 2 centuries. Whether our nation's been at war or at peace, under all manner of threats, even during an ongoing armed rebellion and the Civil War, the clockwork of our democracy has carried on.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it.
The United States and the United States Congress have faced down much greater threats than the unhinged crowd we saw today. We've never been deterred before, and will be not deterred today. They tried to disrupt our democracy. They failed. They failed. They failed to attempt to obstruct the Congress. This failed insurrection only underscores how crucial the task before us is for our republic. Our nation was founded precisely so that the free choice of the American people is what shapes our self-government and determines the destiny of our nation. Not fear, not force, but the peaceful expression of the popular will. Now, we assemble this afternoon to count our citizens' votes and to formalize their choice of the next president. Now we're going to finish exactly what we started. We'll complete the process the right way, by the book. We'll follow our precedents, our laws, and our Constitution to the letter. And we will certify the winner
So well-regulated
of the
militias and all that,
2020
right?
presidential election. Criminal behavior will never dominate the United States Congress.
Right.
This institution is resilient. Our democratic republic is strong. The American people deserve nothing less.
Democratic leader.
Mr. President. Mr. President, it is very, very difficult to put into words what has transpired today. I have never lived through or even imagined an experience like the one we have just witnessed in this Capitol. President Franklin Roosevelt set aside December 7th, 1941 as a day that will live in infamy.
What?
Unfortunately, we can now add January 6th, 2021 to that very short list of dates in American history that will live forever in infamy. This temple to democracy was desecrated. Its windows smashed, our offices vandalized. The world saw Americans' elected officials hurriedly ushered out because they were in harm's way. The House and Senate floors were places of shelter until the evacuation was ordered, leaving rioters to stalk these hallowed halls. Lawmakers in our stance, average citizens who love their country, serve it every day, feared for their lives. I understand that one woman was shot and tragically lost her life. We mourn her and feel for her friends and family. These images were projected to the world. Foreign embassies cabled home their home capitals to report the harrowing scenes at the very heart of our democracy. This will be a stain on our country, not so easily washed away. The final, terrible, indelible legacy of the 45th President of the United States, undoubtedly our worst. I want to be very clear. Those who perform these reprehensible acts cannot be called protesters. No, these were rioters and insurrectionists, goons and thugs, domestic terrorists.
As a thug and a bit of a goon, I don't like
They do not represent America. There were a few thousand violent extremists who tried to take over the Capitol building and attack our democracy. They must and should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Hopefully by this administration, if not, certainly by the next. They should be provided no leniency. I want to thank the many of the Capitol Hill Police and Secret Service and local police who kept us safe today and worked to clear the Capitol and return it to its rightful owners and its rightful purpose. I want to thank the leaders, Democrat and Republican, House and Senate. It was Speaker Pelosi, Leader McConnell, Leader McCarthy, and myself who came together and decided that these thugs would not succeed. That we would finish the work of that our Constitution requires us to complete in the very legislative chambers of the House and Senate that were desecrated, but we know always belong to the people and do again tonight. But make no mistake, my friends, today's events did not happen spontaneously. The president who promoted conspiracy theories that motivated these thugs, the president who exhorted them to come to our nation's capital, egged them on. He hardly ever discourages violence and more often encourages it. This president bears a great deal of the blame. This mob was in good part President Trump's doing, incited by his words, his lies. This violence, in good part, his responsibility, his everlasting shame. Today's events certainly would not have happened without him. Now, January 6th will go down as one of the darkest days in recent American history. A final warning to our nation about the consequences of a demagogic president, the people who enable him, the captive media that parrots his lies, and the people who follow him as he attempts to push America to the brink of ruin. As we reconvene tonight, let us remember, in the end, all this mob has really accomplished is to delay our work by a few hours. We will resume our responsibilities now, and we will finish our task tonight. The House and Senate chambers will be restored good as new and ready for legislating in short order.
How many of you are going to get COVID
now? The counting of the electoral votes is our sacred duty. Democracy's roots in this nation are deep, they're strong, and they will not be undone, ever, by a group of thugs. Democracy will triumph, as it has for centuries. So to my fellow Americans who were shocked and appalled by the images on their televisions today, and who are worried about the future of this country, let me speak to you directly. The divisions in our country clearly run deep, but we are a resilient, forward-looking, and optimistic people, and we will begin the hard work of repairing this nation tonight, because here in America, we do hard things. In America, we always overcome our challenges. Yield the floor.
Mr. President. Majority Leader. I yield 2 minutes to the Senator from Oklahoma, Senator Longford.
Senator from Oklahoma. And you have been listening to Vice President Mike Pence, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer addressing the Senate floor as they get back to it after an unforgettable day of disruption and violence in the U.S. Capitol. Mike Pence saying that it's still the people's house. The world will witness the resilience and strength despite violence and vandalism. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell saying we're getting back to it tonight. The U.S. faced much greater threats than the unhinged crowd crowd we saw today. They tried to disrupt our democracy. They failed. And Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer saying, unfortunately, today will also be a day that will live in infamy, citing the words of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. This will be a stain on our country. He continues to say, not so easily washed away. The legacy of our 45th president, undoubtedly our worst. We will continue our coverage of today's events in the U.S. Capitol straight ahead.
No, don't go to commercial. Damn it.
Getting you where you need to go faster. The most traffic in Toronto. 680 News.
And we continue our coverage of breaking news. Two former presidents are out with statements about today's violence. George W. Bush saying he's watching the scenes of mayhem unfold at the seat of the nation's government in disbelief and dismay. Bush says he is appalled by the reckless behavior of some political leaders since the election and by the lack of respect shown today for the country's institutions, traditions, and law enforcement. Bill Clinton tweeting, today was an unprecedented assault on the Capitol, the Constitution, and the country. Clinton saying the election was free, the count was fair, and the result is final. And former President Barack Obama also weighing in within the last half hour, writing in a statement, quote, history will rightly remember today's violence at the Capitol, incited by a sitting president who has continued to baselessly lie about the outcome of a lawful election as a moment of great dishonor and shame for our nation. Stay with 680 News. We will continue our coverage, but first...
680 News Time, 8:21.
It is time for traffic and weather together on the ones. Let's check your drive with Carleen Donahue.
Yeah, let's check that drive. That drive is a great one. We don't really have much going on the major routes. We did have a stall at Kiel in the Express on the West 401. That's clear, so that's great news. Something just coming in right now from MTO. On the eastbound 401 at Trafalgar, a right lane is blocked with a disabled vehicle. So that's really the only problem you're going to run into. Everything else is moving completely up to speed. Your next report, 8:31, and with a look at the forecast, Natasha Ramsa, hi.
Some of this pesky cloud hanging on through tonight, -4 degrees the low, waking up to wind chills of -9. And then throughout the day, we're going to get into more sunshine, -1. We'll have a northeast wind up to 25 kilometers per hour. So that's going to make it feel like -6 at the warmest point of the day tomorrow. Once the sun gets here, it's here for the weekend. We have a persistent northeast cool flow. So mainly sunny Friday and -3. Partly cloudy Saturday and 0, and mainly sunny Sunday with a high of -1. Tonight down to a low of -4 degrees.
We're sitting at 2 degrees under a partly cloudy sky in downtown Toronto, and it is 1 degree, feeling like -4 out at Pearson.
Coming up at 8:30, we continue our breaking coverage. The U.S. Senate getting right back to it after today's violent siege on the U.S. Capitol building, as senators have returned to the floor to confirm the results of the 2020 presidential election after today's unprecedented violence. Details straight ahead.
Hi, I'm Adam, founder of NewBorrow.com, and I started our company after I got fed up with the mortgage loan process. Turns out I wasn't alone. Thousands of homeowners wanted help.
They went above and beyond to help me get a line of credit. It was amazing service.
They treated me like a valued client and outperformed anyone I spoke to. Want to lower your mortgage payments and save a little money?
Use your home to get a loan with NewBorrow. Visit NewBorrow.com. License 13115.
2021 is a fresh start, so nothing should stop you from having the best year possible, especially a pesky bill.
Darren and Mo's Pay Your Bills contest is back on 98.1 CHFI.
Enter your bill at CHFI.com. Our New Year's resolution is for you to have a fantastic 2021.
It starts when Darren and Mo pay your bills. Weekdays at 8, 1, and 4. Beginning Friday morning at 8.
On 98.1 CHFI.
Breaking news from Washington, U.S. President-elect Joe Biden pleading for calm after today's violent occupation of the Capitol by supporters of President Donald Trump. Biden says Americans must unite beyond partisan grievances.
I remain optimistic about the incredible opportunities. There's never been anything we can't do when we do it together. And this god-awful display today is bringing home to every Republican and Democrat and Independent in the nation that we must step up. This is the United States of America.
Dozens of Trump supporters breached the security perimeter and entered the Capitol this afternoon as Congress was meeting, expected to vote and affirm Biden's presidential win, which they have now gotten back to doing this hour. With the world fixated on the scenes of the U.S. Capitol, we've been able to get exclusive comments from our nation's leader, 680's Martin McMahon, speaking exclusively with the Prime Minister, who says he's worried about these developments.
In response to my question on whether he has confidence that Joe Biden will eventually become the next American president, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau tells me that country's democratic institutions are strong, but it's clearly a worrying situation.
Obviously, we're concerned and we're following the situation minute by minute as it unfolds. There is an important electoral process unfolding in the United States, and I think we all want it and need it to unfold properly and peacefully.
Meanwhile, Conservative leader Erin O'Toole is calling the storming of the U.S. Capitol building an astonishing assault on freedom and democracy. I'm Martin McMahon.
Our very own Richard Southern will have the business report and reaction to today's events straight ahead.
680 News Time, May 25.
This is your breaking news station, 680 News.
Many people suffer from anxiety and depression. They feel an immense sense of despair. I'm Nainish Kotak, and at Kotak Law, we help clients who've been denied long-term disability. Often, insurance companies deny disability claims on the basis that there's insufficient medical evidence. We fight for your right to receive the compensation you deserve. If you've been denied long-term disability, don't give up. Visit KotakLaw.com today.
Your long-term disability through Kotak Law.
Do you have unfiled taxes? Are you overwhelmed and stressed? Boxes of paper, lost documents, disorganized, confused. Don't know where to start? We do. Call Mark Feldstein Chartered Professional Accountants. We deal with this every day. It's never too late. Start sleeping at night. Call Mark Feldstein Chartered Professional Accountants now, or visit markfeldstein.ca. markfeldstein.ca.
In the business report, Richard Southern.
Good evening. Just an unprecedented scene obviously playing out in the U.S. Capitol, and one would think with this as the backdrop, investors would be selling stocks.
They didn't see all this shit happen.
At an all-time
They put their purchase orders in
Dow
this
Jones
morning
Industrial Average
went back to
settling
sleep.
up 437 points at a record 30,829. S&P 500 up 0.5%. Investors were more interested in another story coming out of the United States, that being the Georgia runoff elections. The Democrats, it seems now, will gain control of the Senate, meaning they'll have all executive branches in the United States. Investors like that because it presents a lot of political clarity. It's certainly possible that more fiscal stimulus gets passed into law. Markets very much like that. So that's kind of why we have the Dow closing at a record high, even as Washington, D.C. was under siege. The Dow, though, settling about 200 points off its best level of the day, but again, up 437. The NASDAQ was lower, down 78. Closer to home, the TSX higher. It was up 145 points to 17,828. The price of gold at 1,922 U.S. dollars the ounce. That's some interesting news today out of the aviation business. WestJet says it's set to, in just a few weeks' time, bring its 737 MAX planes back into Canadian skies. Now, these planes from Boeing, of course, have been grounded for almost 2 years in Canada after 2 deadly overseas crashes, but they're allowed to fly again in the States. Transport Canada hasn't allowed them to fly here yet, but it looks like certification is close at hand. And WestJet says as soon as the feds give the okay, they're going to start flying these planes 3 times a week between Toronto and Calgary. Canadian dollar tonight is higher at 78.93 cents U.S. This is 680 News.
When it comes to building brand awareness, Nick DiDonato, President and CEO of Liberty Entertainment Group, advertises on 680 News to help spread the word.
Liberty Entertainment Group runs multiple restaurants and entertainment venues throughout Toronto. When we were awarded the Gamba Rosso Best Restaurant Opening in the World for Don Alfonso 1890, it was big international news. And what better way to get the news out to Toronto than going to 680 News?
And the marketing experts at 680 News are always on hand for professional guidance.
The team at 680 News understood what we wanted to accomplish, and eloquently drafted up some commercials that really got the message out for us. Don Alfonso had arrived in Toronto. Our marketing campaign on 680 News was an overwhelming success.
And the secret of that success?
Consistency on message and frequency. So being on 680 News for a long period of time, delivering the message of our Michelin chef, Don Alfonso, really worked. 680 News is the way to go.
Get 680 News working for you. Visit 680ads.com. That's 680ads.com.
Right now, downtown Toronto, partly cloudy and 2 degrees, feeling like -1. You're listening to 680 News, also being simulcasted on 570 News in Kitchener, News 95.7 in Halifax, and City News 101.1 in Ottawa. 680 News time, 8:30.
Number 1 for news in Toronto. This is 680 News.
It's Wednesday, January 6th. Good evening. I'm Judy Friedman.
I'm Scott Burnett. Here's what's making news right now.
One person has died after being shot during the unbelievable and historic events taking place in and outside the U.S. Capitol.
U.S. President-elect Joe Biden says the scenes of chaos at the Capitol do not reflect a true America.
Do not represent who we are.
Meantime, Donald Trump takes to Twitter to ask protesters to go home.
Political condemnation of the violence in the Capitol building coming from both sides of the aisle.
This is banana republic crap.
While in Georgia, the Democrats win control of the U.S. Senate.
30 minutes away from tip-off in Phoenix between the Raptors and Suns, and many NBA players are kneeling for the national anthem tonight in protest of the earlier incident at Capitol Hill. Sports at 45.
The situation in the U.S. Capitol doesn't rattle financial markets too much. The Dow actually closes at a record high, gaining more than 400 points. Business at 56.
Time 8:31.
Time for traffic and weather together on the ones. Look at the roads now with Carling Donahue.
Thanks, Judy. There's not much happening on my end of things here. Most of the action is in news tonight, but I guess that's great for motorists. If you're driving through the GTA, all your major highways are collision and delay free. We do have a stalled vehicle, though, on the eastbound 401 at Trafalgar. It's at the right lane, so that right lane's blocked, a tow truck on scene. But other than that, everything else is just completely up to speed. We have great conditions out there as well, so you should be having a great drive. Your next report's at 8:41 with the forecast. Natasha Ramsahine.
Mainly cloudy overnight tonight, down to a low -4. We'll wake up to that wind chill around -9. Pretty calm weather, though. After a bit of cloud in the morning, we're going to be mainly sunny through the afternoon. A high of -1 will feel closer to -6 with the wind. Overnight tonight, down to a low of -4 degrees.
Downtown Toronto right now, partly cloudy and 2, feeling like -1. 680 News time, 8:32.
Continuing breaking news coverage from Washington tonight, where the certification of the U.S. election is resuming after an unprecedented day on Capitol Hill that saw the Capitol building breached. A woman killed and lawmakers forced to wear gas masks on top of their COVID masks. Certification of the election is getting underway in Washington this hour after a brief message from U.S. Vice President Mike Pence and both the Senate majority and minority leaders, both Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer, blasting what took place earlier and both committing to completing the certification process in a constitutional manner.
There is now a curfew in place in Washington tonight. It will remain in effect until 6 tomorrow morning. The National Guard and riot police are attempting to disperse the remaining crowd who refuses to adhere to that curfew. 680's Madison Fitzpatrick joins us live with a breakdown of what's happened so far today. Madison.
Yes, Scott, well, like you were saying, the National Guard troops and riot police are on the ground of the U.S. Capitol working to evacuate these protesters from the area. Police have used flashbangs to move the crowds back to prevent them from retaking the Capitol. The mayor of Washington, D.C. enacted a 6 p.m. curfew tonight, lasting until 7 a.m. tomorrow. Obviously, these people who have gathered obviously are ignoring the curfew as they are still outside the building. Now, lawmakers have reconvened to count the electoral college votes and have returned to the chamber floors. Senator Mitch McConnell took to the floor stating the Senate will not be threatened and they will finish the job.
We will not bow to lawlessness or intimidation. We are back in our posts. We will discharge our duty under the Constitution and for our nation. And we're going to do it tonight. The United States and the United States Congress have faced down much greater threats than the unhinged crowd we saw today.
ABC News political analyst Steve Roberts says President Trump fanned the flames that led to today's events.
The people who stormed the Capitol today, they were inflamed, they were incited, they were inspired, they were directed, they were driven by the President of the United States himself.
Now, after everything that we have seen, we are hearing that this historic day has not remained peaceful. A woman was shot in the chest on Capitol grounds. She has now died. At this time, it's unknown who fired their weapon. And we will continue to watch and see how the lawmakers revene and count the electoral votes, obviously, after a wild and chaotic and just outright historic afternoon. Stay with 680 News as we continue to cover the latest developments out of Washington. I'm Madison Fitzpatrick.
U.S. President-elect Joe Biden has spoken and says the scenes of chaos at the Capitol do not reflect a true America, adding democracy is under unprecedented assault. President Trump also commenting on Twitter, but his account has been suspended until tomorrow, and a video asking protesters to leave peacefully was removed from multiple media outlets. 680's Phil Martino joins us live with more on that. Phil.
After the protesters stormed Capitol Hill, Joe Biden said our democracy is under unprecedented assault.
The scenes of chaos at the Capitol do not reflect a true America, do not represent who we are.
Biden urged U.S. President Donald Trump to go on national TV and demand an end to the siege. Instead, Trump addressed his supporters in a minute-long video on Twitter.
We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election, and everyone knows it, especially the other side. But you have to go home now.
Trump's tweet was initially flagged. It has now been removed, Twitter says, as a result of the unprecedented and ongoing violent situation in Washington, D.C. We have required the removal of 3 Donald Trump tweets that were posted earlier today for repeated and severe violations of our civic integrity policy. Facebook has also removed the Trump video. I'm Phil Martino.
Here with All News Radio 680 News, it's 8:36. Political reaction from both sides of the arena, with most condemning today's shocking storming of the Capitol building. Here's 680's Mark Douglas.
The violence in the Capitol building interrupted the process whereby Congress simply goes through the Electoral College votes, and Vice President Mike Pence declares Joe Biden as the next president of the United States. Politicians vow that this process will continue tonight, while they also condemn this violence. Republican Congressman from Illinois, Adam Kinzinger, says in any other country, this violence would be called a coup.
People that are storming the Capitol have been radicalized to believe that this is a holy mission, similar to 1776, and nothing could be further from it.
Democratic Congresswoman Ilhan Omar says she is already drawing up new articles of impeachment against Donald Trump. The Republican governor of Vermont also calling for Trump to resign or be removed. Meanwhile, in Georgia, the second of 2 runoff votes goes to Democrat John Ossoff, and that means the Democrats will control the U.S. Senate. I'm Mark Douglas.
And here at home, we're hearing from all levels of government, the Prime Minister, Premier, and Mayor all weighing in on the violence stateside. 680's Richard Southern continues our coverage.
Well, Prime Minister Trudeau releasing a statement reading, quote, Canadians are deeply disturbed and saddened by the attack on democracy in the United States, our closest ally and neighbor. Violence will never succeed in overruling the will of the people. Again, that's the Prime Minister. We also heard from Ontario Premier Doug Ford, who came out with some very strong words. Ford writing, quote, the situation in Washington is absolutely disgraceful. The peaceful transfer of power is crucial to any democracy. I also broke news of the violence to John Tory, Toronto's mayor, and here's what he had to say about the situation.
It's really sad in the context of what is supposed to be the celebration of a great democracy, one of the world's great democracies, having rendered its verdict with respect to who they wish to have in a position of leadership.
Tory says he's confident any pro-Trump rally in Toronto will be peaceful. I'm Richard Southern.
World leaders expressing shock at the storming of the U.S. Capitol as well.
It was a scene that would have been previously unimaginable.
Followers of President Donald Trump stormed the U.S. Capitol Wednesday, disrupting the work of Congress to affirm President-elect Joe Biden's Electoral College victory and causing lawmakers to seek shelter. World leaders reacted with shock and horror. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson tweeted disgraceful scenes in U.S. Congress. German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas tweeted contempt for democratic institutions has disastrous effects. Former Swedish Prime Minister Carl Bildt tweeted, this is insurrection, nothing less. I'm Mike Gracia.
In 30 seconds, a check of gas prices.
680 News Time, 8:39.
Hi, Anthony Longo here. We're making it easier to save you money and check everything off your shopping list with our new line of Longo's Essentials. Common household products that combine the quality Longo's is known for with prices that will save you the hassle of shopping around. Things like butter and spices, garbage bags, and aluminum foil. You know, the everyday stuff. Just look for the packaging with a big check mark to check everything off your list. Checkity, check, check, check. For quality that meets your family standards, trust ours, Longo's.
And the 680 News gas price update. Impro predicts the price will go up by 3 cents at midnight to just under $1.10 a liter at most GTA stations. Traffic and weather together next.
680 News Time, 8:40.
Ciao, I'm Dominic Grimucci. Next time you order, try our charcoal-infused pizza and enjoy a lighter and airier pizza experience. It may just become your new go-to favorite. Think Italian and taste the difference.
Your life has taken a bit of a break, but your dental health shouldn't. At Ultima Dental, our enhanced cleaning and sterilization protocols will help keep you safe at your appointment, while our team of professionals keep your oral and overall health in check. We also offer our patients a 0% interest payment plan, so you can get the treatment you need when you need it. Located across Ontario and the GTA, contact your local Ultima clinic or visit ultimadental.com to find a dental professional near you. Ultima Dental, care beyond your smile.
Traffic and weather together. Here's Carly Donahue.
This report is brought to you by Canadian Blood Services. Really busy day in the news, really easy day on the roads. We have absolutely nothing to report right now. All your major routes in the GTA are completely up to speed. The weather conditions, road conditions looking good too. And yeah, it's just a dream drive out there through the GTA. But as always, if you see something we're missing, for sure, feel free to give me a call at star 680. I'd appreciate it. But in terms of what I can see, you're going to have a great commute this evening. A message from Canadian Blood Services. Join the fight against COVID-19 by donating plasma. If tested positive for the virus and recently recovered, register now at blood.ca/help. Your next report at 8:51 with your forecast, Natasha Ramsheim.
The sun is slowly reappearing here over the next day, but the temperatures are going down. So we'll be waking up to -4, wind chill -9, still mainly cloudy tonight. And then mainly sunny by the time the afternoon rolls around with a high of -1. It's going to feel like -6, a cool northeast breeze is in play. And then Friday morning, that wind chill to start -16. It's going to be the coldest morning here over the next 5 days. And then mainly sunny with a high of -3 degrees by Friday afternoon. Tonight down to a low of -4.
Downtown Toronto right now, we've got a partly cloudy sky, 2 degrees at Pearson, partly cloudy and 1. 680 News Time, 8:42.
Canadians in Washington are being urged to follow the advice of local authorities after protesters stormed Capitol Hill. Canada's ambassador to the United States taking to Twitter to say they're monitoring the developments very closely and calling for calm. All staff at the embassy, though, which isn't far from Capitol Hill, where all that action happened today, they are safe and accounted for. Coming up in 60 seconds, continuing coverage of today's turmoil on Capitol Hill in Washington.
680 News Time, 8:43.
Every week, 680 News advertisers get their message heard by 1.5 million listeners. Listeners who have money, own homes, drive cars, do their taxes.
I'm Mark Felstein of Mark Felstein & Associates.
And I'm Sarah Felstein, the next generation, and we run an accounting and tax practice in Markham, Ontario.
We've been advertising on 680 News for the last 10 years.
Mark and Sarah Felstein are smart investors.
It's a long-term investment, so when you invest in 680 News, you're investing in your long-term future of your business. But you
have to be patient.
We did see results from 680 News right away, but I can say that over time, those results have compounded. Short and long-term results.
You're branding your name over long term. We noticed that we're off 680 News during the Christmas break. We're still getting calls because of our branding and our long-term commitment.
The nice thing also with 680 News is everybody listens to it. You'll meet someone and then they'll say, oh, I recognize your business name. I heard you on 680 News. Imagine 1.5 million listeners hearing your ad every week. Go to 680ads.com.
This is All News Radio, 680 News.
A partly cloudy sky, 2 degrees downtown, feels like -1 with the wind. Good evening. I'm Judy Friedman.
I'm Scott Burnett. Here's what you need to know right now.
The United States and U.S. Congress have faced much greater threats than brought on by the unhinged crowd we saw today. Those words from a fired-up Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell as he and Chuck Schumer both spoke in the Senate chambers ahead of the resumption of election certification. The process was recessed for several hours this afternoon as pro-Trump demonstrators in Washington stormed the Capitol and breached the Capitol building. A curfew is now in effect in that state, will remain that way until tomorrow morning. The Capitol building was breached by a group of pro-Trump supporters. It is now reportedly secure. We also now know that a woman who was shot inside the building has died of her injuries. Coming up after sports, we will continue our coverage of the unrest today in the U.S. Capitol, and we're getting reaction. Now time for 680 Sports from Sportsnet 590 The Fan. Here's Zach Bodenstein.
The Raptors are about 15 minutes away from tip-off in Phoenix. Toronto enters the game just a half game up on last place in the East. But despite the slow start, Norm Powell doesn't think it's panic time yet.
We know what it takes. We have enough guys here who've been through the trenches, been through ups and downs, and know what it takes to win. It's just getting everybody clicking and rolling on the same page, focus on the same thing for a full course of the game.
That gets going at 9 o'clock. Before their game, the Celtics and Heat released a joint statement following the incident at Capitol Hill today, saying their game is still on as scheduled, but we must not forget the injustices in our society. Using the hashtag Black Lives Still Matter, all players on both teams kneeled for the national anthem in that game and the Pistons-Bucks match in Milwaukee.
Off the opening tip, the teams both take a knee. In their continuing tribute to social justice, the coaching staff of the Milwaukee Bucks also taking a knee.
Meantime, Leafs training camp continued today, but without third-line center Alex Kerfoot, who's day-to-day with an injury. Pierre Engvall took his place. We continue to await word from the provincial government about NHL games being played in Ontario. The Leafs are scheduled to open at home against Montreal next Wednesday. Sports at 15 and 45 past every hour or anytime at sportsnet.ca/590.
Roof sprung a leak. Water came through, shorted out the furnace, the radiator too.
When stuff happens and you need money now, right now, go to prudentfinancial.net.
If you need money in a hurry, prudentfinancial.net. Get money quick, just one click. prudentfinancial.net.
Car or homeowners get approved in less than an hour. Borrow up to $75,000, even if you're self-employed or have no proof of income.
prudentfinancial.net.
Hanging out after work was great. I'm exhausted. Just want to go home and crawl into bed. I think I'm good to drive. I've driven this route 1,000,000 times. Research shows people often can't accurately judge their level of impairment after drinking, and they may not be safe to drive.
Hey, Liz, I know you said you feel okay, but you've had more than a few. Ride with me and we'll get your car tomorrow.
Drunk driving is a woman's issue, too. Learn how to reduce the risk at changetheconversation.ca.
680 News Time, 8:47.
And we are continuing our coverage of today's chaos in the U.S. Capitol. 680's Madison Fitzpatrick joining us live with a rundown of what has happened today. Madison. And we will check back with Madison in a few moments. Twitter, though, has locked U.S. President Donald Trump's account to prevent him from tweeting and is threatening permanent suspension. ABC's Alex Stone has more.
After blocking a video and a subsequent tweet posted by President Trump in which he continued to make unfounded and false claims about winning the election, Twitter has now locked Trump's account for 12 hours. Twitter saying if the tweets are not deleted by the president, then the account will remain locked. and that future violations of Twitter rules will result in permanent suspension of President Trump's Twitter account.
The move comes after Trump supporters breached the U.S. Capitol building, disrupting Congress's formal approval of U.S. President-elect Joe Biden's victory. With the world fixated on the shocking scenes today in Washington, we've been able to get exclusive comment from our nation's leader. 680's Martin McMahon has spoken exclusively with the Prime Minister, who says he's worried about these developments.
In response to my question on whether he has confidence that Joe Biden will eventually become the next American president, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau tells me that country's democratic institutions are strong. But it's clearly a worrying situation.
Obviously, we're concerned and we're following the situation minute by minute as it unfolds. There is an important electoral process unfolding in the United States, and I think we all want it and need it to unfold properly and peacefully.
Meanwhile, Conservative leader Erin O'Toole is calling the storming of the U.S. Capitol building an astonishing assault on freedom and democracy. I'm Martin McMahon.
Officials in Washington are questioning their own safety protocols after angry supporters of the U.S. president stormed the Capitol. ABC's Pierre Thomas with more.
Tonight, as National Guard troops and multiple law enforcement agencies scramble to try and secure the Capitol. Questions already. How did this unravel so quickly? And how was this allowed to happen? Those Capitol police clearly outnumbered by the massive crowds even before the violence.
Trump had encouraged his supporters to come to Washington to fight Congress's formal approval of the Joe Biden victory, citing claims of voter fraud. Coming up in 60 seconds, a check of traffic and your extended forecast.
680 News Time 850.
It's just common sense. A FlexiLine by Capital Direct allows you to manage your funds more effectively and gives you that financial peace of mind. Think of it as secure lending so you can do all the things you've been dreaming about, whether it's the basement renovation or taking care of tuition. It's the smart move that allows you to take only what you need when you want it. Whether you could use $50,000 or $1.5 million, that cash is available to you. Call Capital Direct today at 1-800-NEW-CAPITAL.
CA.
If your furnace is broken, call Reliance Home Comfort 24/7 and we'll get there fast. Only Reliance has over 45,000 5-star reviews, so you can depend on us to put you first and take safety precautions. Need a great deal on a new one? Call now. Ask about our next day installation guarantee and get a $1,000 Visa gift card, plus a Google Nest thermostat when you buy a featured furnace. Need a great deal fast? Reliance. Conditions apply. Savings off our regular price. See website for details.
680 News Time 851.
Time for traffic and weather together on the ones. Here's Carly Donahue.
This report's brought to you by Diamond & Diamond Lawyers. It's been a long day on the roads of looking for something to happen and to let you know about it, but that just seems to not happen today. There's nothing really going on, so you're going to have a great drive. As always, though, just make sure you're keeping up to the speed limit and you're driving safe. Road conditions, weather conditions, all looking good through the GTA routes right now. If you're seeing something I'm missing, give me a call, star 680, and I will check that out. But in the meantime, you are issue-free, construction-free, and delay-free in the GTA. Serious injuries need serious results. When it comes to fighting for your rights, there's nothing tougher than a diamond. Call Diamond & Diamond for a free consultation, 1-800-567-HURT. Your next report is at 9:01 with the forecast. Natasha Ramsahai.
Temperatures tonight a little cooler than last night. It was 0 degrees last night. Tonight we're down to -4, wind chill -9 by morning. Mainly cloudy tonight. Some cloud lingers in the morning, and then by the afternoon we're into that sun and a high of -1. It's a cool start. Friday morning's wind chill to start will be -16, but the afternoon mainly sunny with a high of -3. Saturday partly cloudy and a high of 0, and Sunday mainly sunny with a high of -1. No significant precip on the way until early next week. Tonight we're down to that low of -4 degrees.
Right now in downtown Toronto, partly cloudy and 2 degrees, feeling like -1. At Pearson, partly cloudy and 1, feeling like -4.
Coming up at the top of the hour, we'll have the latest on our continuing team coverage of the unprecedented events that have unfolded today in Washington, where pro-Trump supporters stormed the Capitol building in protest of the certification of the U.S. election by Congress. We have riot police out tonight as a curfew is in place. The certification process, though, has resumed. We'll bring you the very latest as it happens.
680 News Time 853.
And
NHL Live, the stream that must be seen by hockey fans everywhere. I mean real hockey fans. Those who want to watch their favorite team when they live far away, but can't miss a single sniper cell. NHL Live has hundreds of games for the best price. Score your early bird pass now for $159.99 and live stream your team. What do you say? Because you want hockey. Visit NHLLive.com. It keeps growing.
The 680 News Weather Guarantee chatbot
Is over $20,000. Enter now for your chance to win at 680news.com/contest.
And breaking news from Washington, we continue our coverage of today's chaos in the Capitol with 680's Madison Fitzpatrick with a rundown for us. Madison.
Yeah, Judy, well, the National Guard troops and riot police are on the ground of the U.S. Capitol working to evacuate these protesters from the area as the evening comes to a close. Police have used flashbangs to move the crowds back to prevent them from retaking the Capitol. The mayor of Washington enacted a 6 p.m. curfew tonight. Obviously, people are still outside the building at this time disobeying those orders. Now, lawmakers have reconvened to count the Electoral College votes and have returned to the chamber floors. In a speech this afternoon, President-elect Joe Biden pleaded Americans for calm and peace, also calling on President Donald Trump to tell his supporters to stand down. Trump finally releasing a video asking protesters to go home, but still repeating that his false claims that the election had been stolen from him.
This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you. You're very special. I know how you feel, but go home and go home in peace.
Meantime, Twitter says Trump's account has been locked for 12 hours and future violations will result in permanent suspension. Now, after everything we've been seeing this afternoon, we are hearing that this historic day has not remained peaceful. A woman was shot in the chest early on this afternoon on Capitol grounds. She's now died in hospital, and at this time it's unknown who fired their weapon. Stay with 680 News as we continue to cover the latest developments out of Washington. I'm Madison Fitzpatrick.
Business is next.
Your employment rights with Lior Samfiru from employmentlawyer.ca.
If you've lost your job during COVID-19, you may be entitled to significantly more compensation than you realize. Before the pandemic, 9 out of 10 employees were offered inadequate severance packages by their employer. Now, severance offers are more deficient than ever at a time when Canadians are in desperate need of support. Before you accept any severance offer, find out what you are truly owed. Otherwise, you could be leaving tens of thousands of dollars on the table. Don't settle for what your employer wants to pay you. Get what the law says you should receive. Contact me at employmentlawyer.ca and discover why my employment law firm is the most positively reviewed firm in Canada.
Contact employment lawyer Lior Samfiru today. Get the advice you need and the compensation you deserve. Visit employmentlawyer.ca. That's employmentlawyer.ca.
Now time for the 680 News Business Report. Here's Richard Southern.
Good evening. Washington under siege. The U.S. Capitol building broken into. You'd think stocks would tank. They didn't. Wall Street rallied on expectation of more stimulus for the U.S. economy. What with the Georgia runoff elections presenting a lot of political clarity. Yes, the Dow today, despite the situation in D.C., closed at a record high. The industrial average up 437 points to 30,828. Looks like the U.S. Democrats will gain control of the Senate, and investors are thinking, well, there's some political clarity for us. It looks like the government, therefore, will be able to pass some real fiscal stimulus. That brought out the buyers on the markets. The S&P was up 21 points. The NASDAQ did end lower, down 78. TSX ended within spitting distance of its record high, up 145 points to 17,828. Yes, the rally did lose a little bit of momentum into the close after the U.S. Capitol building went into lockdown as supporters of President Trump broke through barricades and entered the building following clashes with police. Trump posted a video on his Twitter account and his Facebook account, which was promptly removed by Facebook and YouTube and Twitter in an unprecedented move by those social media companies. In the video, Trump told protesters to go home, but also repeated false claims about the U.S. election. On the commodities front tonight, the price of gold higher, up $14 to $1,923 the ounce. Price of oil as high as it's been in quite a few months, above $50 per barrel at $50.50. Canadian dollar up 78.93 cents U.S. The latest from Washington, D.C. and the rest of the top stories next on 680 News.
Stay one step ahead of the competition with 680 News.
I'm Steve Friedman from the Chesterfield Shop. We've been in business since 1948 and have 5 locations in and around the GTA selling contemporary leather and fabric seating. The Chesterfield Shop has been advertising for over 10 years with 680 News. We are growing our ad dollars with them because the ads are most effective. People, they like us, they trust us, but we know we have to keep a fresh face out there so that they'll come in and they'll see what's exciting at the Chesterfield Shop.
Why choose 680 News?
When there are so many different options and opportunities in different media, we find that radio and 680 News in particular are very effective for us in getting across our message.
And 680 News helps you reach the customers you're looking for?
680 News absolutely brings in the right demographic for us. People who listen to the ads, they're invested in beautifying their homes and enhancing their lifestyle, and we think that it's a perfect match.
Get 680 News working for you. Visit 680ads.com. That's 680ads.com.
Now, 680 News regional weather conditions for Walmart.
New year, healthy you. Walmart knows wellness. If you need any advice on healthy choices this year, just ask your Walmart pharmacist. This message is brought to you by PharmaScience.
In Brampton, partly cloudy, 1 degree, 0 in Richmond Hill, and in downtown Toronto, 2 degrees under a partly cloudy sky. You're listening to 680 News, also being simulcast tonight on 570 News in Kitchener, News 95.7 in Halifax, and City News 101.1 in Ottawa. 680 News time, 9 o'clock.
Number 1 for breaking news, traffic, and weather. This is 680 News, Toronto.
This is Wednesday, January 6th. Good evening. I'm Scott Burnett.
And I'm Judy Freeman. Here's what's making news this hour.
The Senate reconvenes to validate the results of the U.S. election.
The United States and the United States Congress have faced down much greater threats than the unhinged crowd we saw today.
While senators speak out against the violence in the Capitol. U.S. President-elect Joe Biden says what happened on Capitol Hill was not a protest, it was insurrection.
I'm genuinely shocked and saddened that our nation has come to such a dark moment.
Intense violence in the Capitol building sparks intense political reaction.
Any other country this was happening, that would be called a coup.
While in Georgia, victory for the Democrats, who will take control of the U.S. Senate.
Moments away from tip-off between the Raptors and Suns, while NBA players around the league are protesting today's events at Capitol Hill. Sports at 15.
The Dow closes at a record high. The TSX within spitting distance of its record, despite the unrest in Washington. All the business details at 26.
680 News time, 9:01.
Traffic and weather together and all the ones. Here's Carly Donahue.
Thanks, Scott. This report brought to you by the 407 ETR. It is a great drive in the GTA. Kind of been like this for the last week or so. We haven't really had much going on in the evening time, but great news for you, boring for me, but we'll keep you posted on if anything happens. As always, though, if you're seeing something that you're driving past, give me a hands-free call at star 680 and let me know, because I will check that out. But weather conditions working in your favor. Road conditions are great. No collisions, no crashes, and no delays. The safety of drivers, both on and off the road, means everything to 407 ETR. That's why they've developed a COVID assistance program for those who need it most. Your next report's at 9:11 with your forecast. Here is Natasha Ramsahai.
Mainly cloudy overnight tonight, down to a low of -4. We'll wake up to that wind chill around -9. Pretty calm weather, though. After a bit of cloud in the morning, we're going to be mainly sunny through the afternoon. A high of -1 will feel closer to -6 with the wind. Overnight tonight, down to a low of -4 degrees.
Right now, downtown, a partly cloudy sky, 2 degrees. It is +1 at Pearson. 680 News time, 9:02.
We begin with our breaking news from Washington, where the U.S. Senate is proving its resiliency by getting back to it this hour after an unprecedented violent afternoon, which saw Trump supporters storm the Capitol building.
The violence left 1 person dead and police officers injured. There is now a curfew in effect for the Capitol. We'll have details on today's events coming up in a moment. But first, 680's Madison Fitzpatrick joins us live with more from the Senate floor. Madison.
Yeah, Judy, well, after a dramatic day, lawmakers have returned to chamber floors and have reconvened to count the Electoral College votes. Senator Mitch McConnell took to the floor, stating the Senate will not be threatened and they will finish the job they came to do today.
We will not bow to lawlessness or intimidation. We are back at our posts. We will discharge our duty under the Constitution and for our nation. And we're going to do it tonight. The United States and the United States Congress have faced down much greater threats than the unhinged crowd we saw today.
A Minority Leader Chuck Schumer calling out President Trump for what he said was enticing the violence that was seen at the Capitol today.
The president who promoted conspiracy theories that motivated these thugs, the president who exhorted them to come to our nation's capital, egged them on. He hardly ever discourages violence and more often encourages it. This president bears a great deal of the blame.
And right now, Nancy Pelosi, the House Speaker, is speaking on the House floor right now. We'll get the latest for you in the coming reports. Keep it here on 680 News. I'm Madison Fitzpatrick.
And we now go to our Tijuana Turner, who joins us with a rundown of today's event.
It all started when thousands of people stormed Capitol Hill and eventually made their way inside. We saw little police presence at first, and we watched protesters light smoke bombs in the stairwells, bombard doors, smash windows, enter the offices of officials, and even enter the chamber floor itself. But right now, a curfew is in effect in D.C. and will last until 6 a.m. The National Guard and riot police are still on the grounds of the U.S. Capitol, preventing protesters from re-entering the building. In a speech this afternoon, President-elect Joe Biden pleaded with Americans for peace and calm. And after continuous calls by Democrats and Republicans for President Trump to tell his supporters to stand down, Trump finally released a video asking protesters to go home, but still insisting the election was stolen from him. And after everything we've seen this afternoon, this historic day did not remain peaceful. Multiple officers were injured in the riot, and a woman who was shot in the chest on the Capitol grounds has died in hospital. I'm Tijuana Turner.
There's political reaction pouring in from both sides of the aisle, with most condemning today's events in Washington. Here's our Mark Douglas.
Political reaction to the violence in the Capitol building, perhaps best summed up by Democratic Congresswoman Karen Bass.
This is just so appalling and so embarrassing to our country.
But there are stronger condemnations, including from Republicans like Congressman Adam Kinzinger.
An attempt to occupy the Capitol, to intimidate members of Congress. Any other country this was happening, that would be called a coup. We'd call it that, so that's what it is.
Going even further, the governor of Vermont, Phil Scott, another Republican, now calling for Trump to resign or be removed from office. And Democrat Ilhan Omar says she's already drawing up new articles of impeachment against Donald Trump. Omar also vowing, along with others, that Congress will tonight continue the process of reading out the Electoral College votes and declaring Joe Biden as the next president. Meanwhile, in Georgia, a different kind of declaration, as John Ossoff has won the second of two Senate runoff votes that now gives control of the U.S. Senate to the Democrats. I'm Mark Douglas.
Here at home, we're hearing from the Prime Minister, Premier Ford, and Mayor Tory. 680's Richard Southern continues our coverage.
Well, let's start with Prime Minister Trudeau. In a written statement, the PM said, quote, Canadians are deeply disturbed and saddened by the attack on democracy in the United States. He goes on to say that, quote, violence will never succeed in overruling the will of the people. Strong words as well from Ontario Premier Doug Ford, who said, quote, the situation in Washington is absolutely disgraceful. The peaceful transfer of power is crucial to any democracy, and I'm incredibly disappointed with what we are witnessing in the United States. Again, that Premier Ford. John Tory said he's also saddened by the situation in the States. I asked the mayor of Toronto if he's concerned about pro-Trump protests in this city turning violent. And he said he's not, because protests up until this point have been peaceful.
If that's the way people do things in this city, and I think if there are protests that have to do with Mr. Trump or anybody else, I'm confident that the spirit of those protests will be the same.
Gauging local political reaction.
What?
Southern 680.
Wait. What do you mean the spirit will be? Wait.
President
In President Trump's video put out during the height of the unrest at the Capitol, he told people to go home, but he also continued to make unproven claims about the election. Facebook and Twitter have removed the video, calling it an emergency situation, saying the platforms prohibit incitement and calls for violence. Twitter initially left up the video without the ability to like, respond, or retweet it. Then it removed the video along with a follow-up tweet from the president. Alex Stone, EBC News.
A West Virginia lawmaker was among the supporters of President Trump who stormed the Capitol today, and he took video along the way, which he publicly posted.
Republican delegate Derek Evans of West Virginia posted video of himself wearing a helmet, clambering at a Capitol door to breach the building. Then he said, "We're in. Keep it moving, baby." Once inside, Delegate Evans could be seen milling around the Capitol rotunda, although telling others not to vandalize the historic painting. The Speaker of the West Virginia State House of Delegates says Evans will need to explain his involvement. But Evans, on his Facebook page, dubbed Derek the Activist, claims that he was only there to film history, using the hashtag #StopTheSteal. Jackie Quinn, Washington.
Coming up in 30 seconds, we'll check on the price of the pumps.
680 News Time 909.
News is always changing. Now more than ever.
Listen 3, 4, 5 times a day.
This is 680 News.
Ask to play us on your smart speaker.
In life, the most important question anyone could ever ask is, will you marry me?
Not. Are we alone in the universe?
Well,
Or how did the brain name itself?
Okay, point taken. The most important question